Hello there, welcome to the Saroy channel and welcome to my Omnibus series. I've got so many of these omnibuses that are going to come out so that you'll be able to listen to an hour's worth of stories, which I know you're going to love. You know, the thing is that telling stories is such a fine art, and it's something that was practiced hundreds of years ago when people didn't have the technology that we have today. And everyone would gather around the fire and listen to a wonderful story. And also, what is so wonderful about a story is that personally, I think it is the best way to go to sleep. Every night when I go to bed, I always listen to stories. And that's something that parents used to do with their children. It's something that they still do with their children. There's nothing better than a good story. And so I hope you're going to enjoy this series. And before we start, I just want to say, do subscribe to my channel because you don't want to miss out on anything. Because I'm in for the long haul and I want to make sure that you get the most stunning stories to go to bed with at night or to listen to when you want to be one of those people sitting beside the fire and listening. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and let's get started. I hope you're going to enjoy the omnibus.
Dear Sarah, and all your lovely listeners, I sat there crying on my bed, with tears of great regret. I had messed up big time. Why did I get so embroiled in such sticky situations? Why was I so easily drawn into such dysfunctional relationships that in the long term would never ever work out? I was a woman that was currently in a same-sex relationship. This was why I was in such a state. Because I knew this farce of a relationship could never realistically work and would have to sooner or later come to an end. And I had no way of knowing how I was going to get Candace to understand that I wanted out. The woman did not know the meaning of the words. "It's not working out," I had told Candace over and over again. So much so that I was tragically beginning to sound rather like a broken record. Candace would guffaw with laughter, never taking me seriously for a moment. She would give me a rather amused wink and say she believed I needed more time to get in touch with my true authentic self, to find out who I really was. In truth, what I really needed was to end this relationship with her, and the sooner the better. But I knew I was stuck between a rock and a hard place, because getting through to Candace was like getting a stone through a sieve. It wasn't happening. The woman didn't want to hear any inconvenient truths that did not suit her agenda. The tears unabashedly spilled down my cheeks. I had to wipe them away. I sobbed like I had never done before, like a newborn baby, as my mother's sagacious words rang into my head, and I knew I needed to give them swift attention. My mother had warned me about Candace and her extreme fixation over me. "Sweetheart, you need to get away from this woman. She's obsessed with you. Obsession is a very dangerous thing, you know. You hear stories in the media, don't you, of dreadful things that happen to people because of an obsessed partner. You've got to make Candace realize that you need to end the relationship." I knew my mother was right, but she had no comprehension of just how unreasonable Candace was. She twisted everything to her own advantage. It was close to impossible to stand up to the woman. Our relationship had thankfully never been physical, as I judiciously claimed that I was not ready for intimacy of any kind. Candace had thankfully respected that. She had been long-suffering and patient with me, reassuring me that we could take things very slowly. There was, of course, one big problem with us. I was not gay. Indeed, I never had been. I didn't know how I had allowed this woman to persuade me that I was gay. Although, to be absolutely fair, bisexual was the word she used to describe my sexual identity. She seemed to know more about me than I knew about myself. It sounds like an impossible scenario to find yourself entangled in. But believe me, I'm not the first, nor will I be the last person that would find themselves in such a sticky situation, like a bee caught up in a big vat of honey. I assure you, other women like myself have fallen into this insidious trap, like a little girl who's a tomboy as a child, and for a while falsely believes she should have been born a boy. And later on she soon realizes she was just going through a rather confused period in her life. In my case, I have never been remotely confused about my own sexual identity. But the trouble is, I'd never met the likes of Candace Warren before. The woman was incredibly persuasive, very manipulative, and for a long time she had me question my own sexual orientation, when I was so obviously heterosexual. And I believe she knew it all along. But Candace was resolutely determined to flip the pancake to a side that suited her best, and to use her artful skills to convince the pancake itself that it was a blueberry rather than a plain, if you get my drift. In truth, Candace was the kind of woman that could sell ice to an Eskimo, so that the Eskimo might falsely believe that his stash of snow that surrounded him wherever he turned was in serious short supply. "Can you not feel the attraction between us?" she said to me, peering at me through her besotted, animated brown eyes, and reaching to grab my hand over the restaurant table that was covered in a starched white linen tablecloth, and the candle that was flickering on the table made her devoted puppy dog stare she was giving me all the more pronounced. She made me feel as if I was the most beautiful, beloved woman in the entire world. No one had ever made me feel this adored or cherished before, and in truth I liked the feeling very much, especially given that of late I'd been terribly, terribly lonely. I guess having all the attention lavished on me made me feel fully appreciated, special and validated, as for a while my self-esteem and confidence seemed to have taken a nosedive down the drainpipe. It was like Candace was wiping all that negative self-doubt away and making me feel good about myself again. Candace explained how it was in her knowledgeable book. "The way I see it, our attraction is very subtle. The sparks you find between a man and a woman are very different to the sparks between two women. There's no subtlety in the former. Believe me, I know all about that," she said with a contemptuous scoff, as if male and female relationships were outmoded and extremely stale. "There's definitely something special between us. I can feel it." "Is there?" I said in bemusement, giving Candace a blank, rather vacuous stare. I really wanted to believe her, but felt no attraction to Candace whatsoever. I liked her personality, of course I did. But how did I tell her that without appearing rude and insensitive? This was an uncomfortable conversation that I found rather difficult to handle. I had never been on the receiving end of a woman's affections. It was a whole new experience for me that threw me right out of my comfort zone. It would have been a lot easier to give a man the brush off, but I couldn't do the same to Candace, for reasons I cannot explain. With her I remained a little guarded and hesitant. "Oh, definitely," she insisted. "You and I, Toya, can make the entire world rock. We were meant to be together forever and ever," she said, throwing her arms up in the air in a dramatic gesture that was so funny it made me giggle. "You're crazy," I said, shaking my head. "You're really, really crazy." "No, I'm not crazy," Candace laughed, with a big beam on her face. "About you, maybe. But crazy, absolutely not. I know exactly what I want, and when I see for it, I go for it. And you, Toya, you're all I want. I mean, who would want to be with a man if they can have me?" she teased, giving me a big wink. But I knew beneath the humour she was being deadly serious. "I mean, look at that loser of a boyfriend you dated for 4 whole years. And the abysmal way he treated you. You deserve so much better, Toya. Just so you know, I would never ever treat you like that. I mean, how could I ever do that to someone like you? That scoundrel treated you with such disrespect. It's disgusting." "You're right about that. He was a loser," I agreed. "I seriously regret dating him for 4 years. But are you not forgetting one thing here, Candace? I'm not gay." At this point I tried to avoid Candace's steely gaze. This conversation was embarrassing and made me feel rather self-conscious. Candace threw her head back in laughter, which was something she often did when I made a comment. "Oh, I think you are, Toya. I think you are gay," she said, giving me a cheeky wink. "It's all right to deny it, you know. You come from a strictly religious, conservative background. And let's not kid, Catholics, well, they can be set in their ways, can't they? Doggedly set in their ways. So your being bisexual is not something that is easy to admit to yourself, but I promise you, you are. I can tell that you are. I should know, because I'm gay myself. And the difference between you and me is that I've embraced my sexual identity, but you are so afraid of yours, so you've been in denial all this time. You think I'm bisexual? I asked her, looking at her in abject astonishment. But I've never been remotely attracted to women. That's what you're saying to yourself all the time, Toyah, over and over again. That's what you're trying to convince yourself. But think about us. We have an incredible friendship, don't you think? But of course we do, I agreed. I value our friendship very much, Candace. I'm very glad to have met you. You make me laugh a lot. We're good girlfriends and as close as sisters, but lovers definitely not. I don't mean to be unkind, but the idea is ludicrous for me. There you go again, off on a tangent, said Candace, laughing, shaking her head vigorously, and rolling her eyes in mock exasperation, as if I was a little kid, talking nonsense and failing to see any sense. I can see the denial with you is deeply entrenched. Let's just say, Toyah, forget about the romantic side of things between us for a moment. I hope you can fully appreciate that every good relationship starts first from a firm foundation of being great friends. You and I are a team, Toyah, and we're going to make this relationship work. We are? I asked, sounding rather doubtful. Of course we are. We can take things very slowly if you like. The one thing about me, Toyah, is I'm a patient person. I get it. I really do. I know you're desperately shy, very demure, and I understand that. Furthermore, you've never been with a woman before. It's new, uncharted, unexplored territory for you. But there's no pressure on my part. On the physical side of a relationship, intimacy is the least important thing at this stage of the game, as far as I'm concerned. And besides, I'd never make you do something that would make you feel uncomfortable. I squirmed with embarrassment, my face turning a shade of pink, probably the colour of a peony. I hated with a passion talking about intimate things. Once again, Candace rolled her head back with laughter. You're so cute, Toyah. Why, I do believe you're blushing. You really are old-fashioned, aren't you? You're a bit straight-laced. And guess what? I kind of like it. These days people are so brash, are they not? But you're refreshing, Toyah, naive and whimsical, and I love that about you, she said, clapping her hands in delight. I'm not blushing, I said defensively. I'm just a little hot in this restaurant, that's all, I said, fanning the air with my hands. It's a bit stuffy in here, don't you think? Candace laughed. The only heat in here, Toyah, is coming directly from you. You're hot, girl. The best part of it all is you're blindly oblivious to how attractive you really are. That's a rare, treasured quality to find in a lady. Some of the girls I've met think they're all that, and that's such a big turn-off for me. Let's just say when people are full of themselves and think that you should be grateful that they've graced you with their presence, that makes me want to throw up, because their vanity knows no bounds. You see it all over TikTok. Look at me, I'm so hot, that kind of thing. But you, Toyah, you're humble, and you're sweet, and that's so lovely. That's kind of you to say, I said. But the truth is I haven't got anything to be vain about. I would hardly describe myself as an oil painting. You see, that's what I'm talking about, said Candace. You're gorgeous, Toyah, and you failed to see it. She leaned forward over the table to get my attention. She jiggled the ice in her cocktail glass and took a slurping sip, placing the glass down on the table directly and staring at me with wide eyes. What? I said. Candace lowered her voice discreetly, almost as if she was worried that people dining at other tables were eavesdropping on our conversation. I've just had a brilliant idea, she whispered, waving her arm around excitedly, as if she just had found the answer to a quiz question. I think we should move in together, don't you? This time I was shaking the ice in my own cocktail glass and hurriedly took a sip. Move in together, I said nervously, but... Candace put her hand up in the air to stop me from saying anything more. No buts, Toya. Come on, this is definitely going to work. It'll be brilliant. It makes so much sense. You're living in a clapped-out apartment, aren't you? Where more things are broken than are actually working. You're paying for the luxury of living in such a dump. I don't mean to be unkind, but I was really shocked when you showed me around your apartment. I couldn't believe you were living in a place like that. You deserve better, Toya, much better. It makes perfect sense, doesn't it? You and I, we get on like a house on fire. We've become very close friends. So why don't we move in together? Let's do it. I raised a brow. What are you talking about, Candace? I asked. Candace chuckled. You are slow on the uptake, Toya. Honestly, haven't you heard a single word I've just said? I want you to move in with me, of course. Friends do it all the time, don't they? Even when they're not romantically inclined. Like I hope to be with you one day. Think about it for a second. I've got a stunning apartment in Manhattan that my father bought for me. It's inherited money from old wealth. Back in the day, my family were big into coal. Let me take care of you, Toya. I'd be honoured to enjoy the privilege. If I had my way, I'd wrap you up so carefully in tissue paper to keep the big bad world away from impregnating you with its filth and debauchery. You are so precious, Toya. You're a treasured jewel. I hope you realise that. Your kind only comes along once in a lifetime. I know a great thing when I see it. Unlike that very foolish ex-boyfriend of yours, who was a prize idiot to let you go. He didn't see a good thing when it was staring him brazenly in the face. I saw your star quality from the first time I laid eyes on you. I bet your ex-boyfriend is crying now, but the milk has already been spilt, and it's too late for him to mop up the mess. She reached forward to grab one of my bouncy dark red curls in her hand, and sighed appreciatively. You have the most gorgeous hair colour, Toya. Do you know that? She said, staring at my hair, as if it was all but spun gold. Do you know how many women would literally kill to get this colour out of a bottle? But yours is all natural. And with your flawless porcelain fair skin, it makes you look like a princess. You have that pre-Raphaelite aristocratic look about you, Toya. Has anyone told you that before? Well, yes, I've been described as pre-Raphaelite, but no one's ever called me aristocratic looking before. It's a pity my bank balance doesn't reflect my so-called physical status, I teased. So what do you say, girl? Are you going to move in with me or not? Please say yes, Toya. I could feel Candace's hopeful eyes boring into mine. I knew without a shadow of a doubt that this woman was smitten by me. I had enjoyed a couple of relationships in my past, but I'd never ever experienced a relationship where the person in question was a woman, and the woman was fixated on me in the way Candace was. I will say at this point a red flag was blowing in my mind, as if warning me that I needed to be on my guard. So very gingerly I applied as much cautionary tact as I possibly could to bring closure to Candace's wild idea that I knew would never work. How could it? I wasn't gay. Yes, I liked her. She was a great friend. But there was no more to our relationship than that. I didn't think it would be fair to lead her up the garden path and give her false hope. I needed to establish boundaries now, before things got wildly out of hand. Candace was absolutely right about my shabby apartment. It was far from glamorous, but at least it was mine. Living with her, no matter how glamorous and appealing her apartment was, didn't seem like a judicious thing to do. A little voice in my head was whispering, "Don't do it, don't do it." "I'm not sure that's a good idea, Candace," I said apprehensively, twisting my napkin in my hand rather nervously, making some curious shapes with the starched linen fabric. It was a useful ploy to adopt, in avoiding meeting Candace's eyes, that was studying me pleadingly. We were surrounded by the pleasing sounds of a busy, chirpy, upbeat restaurant that was doing a roaring trade on that Friday evening. I could hear the clanging of cutlery, the chinking of glasses, the background noises of people chatting away and laughing merrily at their tables. The waiters were swathed in very smart black and white uniforms. They seemed to glide seamlessly across the floors, almost as if they were skating. They were carrying trays in their hands containing exotic, colourful cocktails and white plates piled high with steaming pastas. The delicious mouth-watering savoury aromas that wafted around the restaurant were enough to make anyone salivate. I could smell melted cheese, tomato and garlic. This was my absolute all-time favourite Italian restaurant, where they served authentic Italian food that you'd likely find in Tuscany or Rome. The owners were an Italian couple from Naples, and the food they presented was the best I'd ever tasted or eaten. There is no doubt in my mind that Italians knew how to cook. My tongue was titillated with all the savoury flavours of basil, garlic, tomato and butter. I was feeling satisfied with my gastronomic experience. Since I'd been spending time with Candace, she had extravagantly taken me out to the most wonderful places, always insisting on treating me to everything, and when I offered to pay she'd not hear of it. Even my ex-boyfriends had not showered me with the fragrant confetti of such attentive and devoted affections before, and I rarely felt pampered by Candace in every regard. She had brought me wonderful gifts, flowers and chocolates, and had spoilt me in a way that had been more than just a pleasure. "I get it, Toyah. I really do," said Candace seriously. "As I was saying to you earlier, I appreciate living with a woman is new territory for you." She lowered her voice as she became conscious of a couple at the next table, looking at us inquiringly. The woman pulled a face when Candace caressed my hand. She was old school quite clearly, and not remotely comfortable with seeing two people of the same sex being affectionate towards each other. In this day and age, people were becoming more comfortable with same-sex relationships, but there was always the occasional type that couldn't get their head around what they considered to be a complete anomaly. Candace continued, "I know it's intimidating to move in with a woman when you've never had a relationship with a woman before. But as I said, we can take things very slowly, little steps. Rome wasn't built in a day, as my mother always used to say. For a start, you can have your own bedroom suite in my apartment. We can live together like roommates in the beginning and see where we go to from there. We can allow things to blossom between us naturally. There's a season for everything, Toyah, as there will probably be for us. We've got a lifetime we can spend together, so we can take things at a turtle's pace if you like." I guess I agreed to finally move in with Candace. As for one thing, the woman had plenty of money. The apartment she owned was luxurious, and I was struggling with paying the rent for a shoddy apartment. Candace had insisted I could live with her rent-free, so looking a gift horse in the mouth seemed rather foolish. I had been so lonely living on my own in that run-down apartment that I had been renting out in a seedy part of the city. So living with Candace was an upgrade from quite literally rags to riches. Yes, there were big problems in sight, obstacle courses to overcome, and roadblocks. For a start, I wasn't attracted to Candace like that, but she seemed insistent that whether we had a relationship or not, that I should move in. She said we'd see where it went. I do know that when I was in her company, she lit up my world like a bright Christmas tree. She was flamboyant, hilarious and fun to be around, and it seemed a hell of a lot better than being on my own. I reminded myself of how lonely I'd been, so living with Candace would be lots of fun. She did say she wanted to be friends first, so we could get to know each other better. There was no pressure for us to be romantically involved yet, if ever. "At least give us a chance, Toyah," Candace had said. "I admit there's a chance it might not work out. We can live together as friends and see where that goes to," she said nonchalantly. "You can't say fairer than that, can you?" "But I'm not gay," a voice whispered into my mind. How could this ever work? Furthermore, what would my mother say about all this? She was a devout Catholic, and the idea of two women living together, in her book, was a cardinal sin. Yes, my mother did live in the 21st century. She knew how things had changed over the years, and same-sex relationships were no longer regarded as taboo. Having said that, my mother was extremely religious. I knew she'd be absolutely appalled if Candace was proved right, and there was an unexplored part of myself that refused to admit I was gay. I suspected a woman like my mother would not relish learning that about her only daughter. I could imagine her increasing her Hail Marys if that were the case. Candace had told me she could tell I was in denial about my sexuality. Could she be right about that? Surely not. She was telling me that I'd grown up in a tight conservative background where I was denying the truth of who I really was, for fear of ridicule, for being judged and the condemnation that I believed I might be subjected to from both of my parents. Yet I doubted that very much. I do know when I sat there in the Italian restaurant and finally surrendered to her artful persuasions, and said, "All right, we'll give it a go, but as long as we're just friends. I'm not ready for a relationship yet, and I'm not sure if I am actually gay. That's a big problem for me, Candace." Candace had clapped her hands in glee, so loudly in fact that many of the restaurant customers had stopped short what they were doing to stare at us, as if wondering what Candace was so incredibly excited about. She looked like someone who'd just heard they'd won the lottery. Candace had ordered all the dessert items on the menu to celebrate the fact that I was now moving in with her. Our table had been covered with a sumptuous affair of creme carlotta, limoncello soufflé, all manner of delicious Italian cakes, gelato of every kind, from pistachio to caramel, and of course the Italian all-round favourite tiramisu. I think I must have rolled out of that restaurant like a great big fat sausage dog. The very next day I'd moved in with Candace. I had been given a lavish, stunning bedroom and bathroom suite, all of my own, so I could thoroughly enjoy my own privacy. It had been sumptuously decorated, with plenty of savoir faire and oodles of style. It was a whole lot bigger than my entire apartment that I'd been renting, put together. It was like a luxurious suite you would find in an ornate hotel. It had an oakwood sleigh bed, a king-size one at that, 2 matching side tables, a glass wrought iron table surrounded by some really glamorously attired upholstered chairs, and a sofa. There was a large self-contained cabinet that contained a television and its own little inbuilt refrigerator. There was a walk-in closet with so much room for storing your clothes, and a luxurious bathroom suite with fluffy towels and a bath so big it could possibly give a whale a beauty treatment and some barnacle removal therapy. It was as good as a self-contained flat, with breathtaking views over the street, where I could observe all the comings and goings of the vibrant up-and-coming neighbourhood. You could leave the apartment and take a walk down the road, passing the most stunning-looking brownstone apartments, to reach the most fabulous restaurants sporting trendy avant-garde menus. There were coffee shops and vintage boutiques. What was there not to like about living in this opulent, bustling part of Manhattan? Maybe I was using Candace and taking full advantage of her kindness. Some might say I was. One advantage of being with her meant I was never alone. She filled in the empty silences and awkward gaps. She made me smile when life seemed to lack sparkle, like a bottle of bubbly that's gone very flat. I mean, I'd heard that heterosexual women in prison often become lovers when they are not that way inclined. They are lonely, and many of them are never going to get out of their incarceration. These female prisoners manage to make things work between themselves, even when they are so obviously heterosexual, and even without physical attraction being involved in their relationship. But I doubted I could do that with Candace. It just felt all wrong. I had liked Candace in a way that you would enjoy the company of your best friend. Growing up as an only child, I had never experienced the privilege of having a best friend before. Even when I was at junior and senior high, I failed to develop any close friendships with other girls. Maybe this was because I was not an extrovert by nature, and struggled to make close friendships. I was always the one that would sit in the back of the classroom, hoping I'd never get noticed. Candace had come along in a fragile moment of my life, when she'd shone a bright, cheerful light on a dark, lonely place and brought a smile to my face. I was in a vulnerable place at the time when I'd met Candace. I had left university a couple of years back, and was working in the city with an accountancy firm that did not pay too great for the junior staff that were fumbling around at the bottom of the ladder, desperately trying to ascend it. When I was at university, I discovered to my horror that the boyfriend I'd been dating for over 4 years, William Chapnell, who everyone affectionately called Will, had been cheating on me for 2 of those 4 years, which was a big, cold, wretched slap on the face. How had I not seen through the signs, smelt a lingering whiff of perfume on his person, or observed a lipstick stain on the cuff of his collar, perhaps? How had I not seen through the collage of exaggerated excuses that he regularly made towards me as to why he couldn't see me that night? How had I failed to notice all the cracks that were beginning to develop in our relationship? Will was very good at deception, and he turned on the charm like a light switch, and so I was easily fooled. I had put down his apathetic insouciance towards me over the last couple of years as Will working hard to get his degrees, but in truth all I had been was gormlessly naive, as my mother was later quick to point out to me. My mother had been grossly appalled when I had told her that Will's affair had been going on for 2 whole years without my knowledge. She threw her hands around her face in exasperation, stared at me with wide, incredulous eyes, and said, "Toya, am I hearing right? Do you mean to tell me you didn't even know that Will was cheating on you for so long? The signs were everywhere, love, as plain as day. I cannot for the life of me believe you did not see them." "I didn't know, Mum. I had no idea he was cheating on me," I blubbered, feeling my face reddening with shame. I had felt so humiliated to be cheated on. It had made me feel worthless, as if I'd meant nothing to Will. But it was even more earth-shattering to have become aware of his treacherous duplicity and betrayal. My mother had taken me lovingly into her arms and said, "You poor, poor thing, sweetheart. You're going to have to be more savvy and streetwise, my dear. You really are. People can take full advantage of you when you're naive like this. You're far too trustworthy for your own good. It's a dog-eat-dog world out there, I'm afraid to say. It can be brutal, you know. I know me and your father have had a rock-solid relationship, and you've been positively influenced by our code of ethics. But I hasten to say not everybody is like us, and you need to realize that. Out there in the big wide world, it's a slippery slope. You're going to have your wits about you all the time. Not all men are reliable and faithful like your father is, you know. You need to understand that. You only have to look at some of those dreadful dating websites they have these days. It would seem the ulterior motive is for men and women to meet up for a meaningless, rather shallow romp in the hay. None of them seem to want long-standing, enduring relationships. It's dreadfully sad, an awful shame, but it's what is happening these days to this young generation. And my guess is that some of those people are going to end up very lonely indeed." "But how could Will do this to me, Mum? Why didn't he just tell me he loved somebody else? I could have dealt with that. Yes, it would have hurt like hell. Yes, I would be devastated. But at least I'd have my dignity still intact." My mother shook her head sadly. "None of this is your fault, Toya. You need to realize that. Don't take things so personally. Let's just say Will Schaponi is a coward, a fool, and probably a narcissist. Maybe he wanted to have 2 women on the go at the very same time, adoring him, to stroke his ever-so-inflated ego. I wouldn't be surprised at all. That would support my narcissistic theory about him. You were far too good for the likes of him. In truth, when we met him for the first time and you brought him here for dinner, don't you remember? I recall thinking he was very slippery and sly. He did turn on the charm and buttered me up, but I saw through it all, Toya. I never liked him from the word go. There was something about him that made me distinctly uneasy. I was clandestinely hoping the relationship would self-combust all on its own. Instead, you ended up going out with him for 4 long years. You seemed dreadfully serious about him. I did have sleepless nights that one day you would get married to him, and he would do the dirty on you. You see, when you're a mother, love, you can't interfere with your children's choices when it comes to their boyfriends. Sometimes you have to sit back watching your child put her hand onto a hot plate of a stove, and you can do nothing to stop it. I had to let you learn from your own mistakes, did I not?" "You did?" I said, looking aghast. "Why didn't you tell me you felt this way about him, Mum? I thought you liked him." "Because, love, you wouldn't like it if I told you I didn't like your boyfriend, would you? You'd probably become very defensive. So on my part it was better to say nothing than interfere. Besides, I had a feeling the relationship would run its course in the end. But it took a long time to do that. I had no idea you felt this way about Will, Mum. I'm quite shocked to hear you say all this. Well, all I'm saying, love, is you deserve so much better. Let's just say you need a man who treats you right, like your father does me. Be glad that it's over between the two of you. That's all I can say. Better you find out his true colours than after you've walked down the aisle with him. I'm very thankful that that never happened. Your mother's absolutely right, my father interjected. The man's a bloody fool. That's all I can say. And I'm not being biased because you're my daughter, Toyah. If you ask me, you're well rid. Respect and trust, as your mother is saying, in a relationship is crucial. And if it's lacking, you move on. Will was cheating on you, and once a cheat, always a cheat, I say. Like your mother, I never warmed to the man. There was something that wasn't right about him, but I couldn't work out what it was. I guess it was a natural instinct on my part that he'd end up treating you badly. It goes to show that instincts should never be disregarded or overlooked, because I was right on the money about that man. But I loved him, Dad. I really did. I thought he felt exactly the same way about me. If he's been cheating on you for 2 years, love, you have your answer, said my father. Will never respected you. I could never behave like that towards your mother. She is my world. I want to protect her, and I want to protect you, because I love the both of you. That kind of love is loyal and devoted. It does not accommodate betrayal or dishonour, because it cannot. I know it's hard to feel rejection, love, but I'm afraid we all have to experience it at one point in time. Growing up, I was ditched by a few girls myself, but I guess I got the big prize in the end, because I got to be with your mother. I never looked back. I count my blessings I never ended up with any of those other girls, as you will one day when you're a happily married woman. You'll look back and say, what did I ever see in Will? Thank God we never got married. What your father is saying, love, is that when you meet the right man, and it's meant to be, you will know it. My parents regretfully had no idea about the inward turmoil I'd been going through at the time. It had been rather like uncomfortably swallowing a huge boulder that had struggled to go down my throat and was almost impossible to digest. I had unfortunately witnessed my boyfriend holding hands with the prettiest girl at college, well, at university, that is, Stella Montreya. The worst part of it all was when I saw them together in that Mexican restaurant. At first I had no idea it was my boyfriend, but I could tell this couple were smitten with each other. But when I think back about it, it makes my skin crawl. I certainly hated my ex-boyfriend's betrayal, and in that moment I hated Stella when I realized that she was with him, for being so annoyingly pretty. No wonder he had dropped me like a brick and pursued her instead. I was not your stereotype pretty, if you know what I mean. I had slightly unusual looks in a pre-Raphaelite sort of way, fair skin and long curls of dark hair with natural auburn red highlights, the kind of hair that when you look into the sun you will pick up all the red hues. I was quick to spot the flaws and imperfections in my appearance, as we all do. I didn't particularly like the light sprinkling of freckles on my nose that my father thought were endearing, and the extreme whiteness of my porcelain skin, which would annoyingly never tan, but I did think my blue eyes were my very best asset. Stella Montreya had golden skin, as if she'd been sunning herself in the sun on a Hawaiian island for weeks on end. She had blue eyes and long blonde hair, and her figure was as close to perfect as you could get. It could have easily been used for the mannequins in shop windows, or she could have been one of those enviable stick-thin models that saunter down the red carpets at Paris Fashion Week, the kind of woman who looked as if she lived on celery sticks and ran away from an ice cream sundae as if she was being chased by a threatening killer shark. The worst part of it all was that when I was at university, many people were well aware that Will was cheating on me and having an affair with Stella Montreuer. The irony of ironies is Stella Montreuer did not know about my relationship with Will, in the same way as I didn't know about hers with him. We were both completely clueless about each other, and the fact that we were both victims of Will's treachery is rather ironic. I would see her around campus quite regularly, and she would often smile at me and give me a friendly nod, even though we didn't really know each other. It would seem no one had the decency, courage, conviction, or possibly even just interest to tell us what was going on beneath our noses, because we would both like to have known. I found out myself when I happened to be invited to a Mexican restaurant in town with a girlfriend of mine, and I very nearly never went. Will had let me down earlier that evening, saying, "Sorry, babe, I've got a ton of studying to do. So much hard work, you have no idea. These final exams are incredibly important. I cannot afford to screw up. But the good thing is it won't always be like this. One day you will see it's all worth my while, all the hard work I mean, when we begin to rake the money in." When me and my friend Carol had entered the Mexican restaurant together to order our tacos with tons of guacamole, we had both noticed, to our amusement, a couple in the far corner of the restaurant, swooning over each other. Carol had chuckled. "Look at that couple over there in the corner. Can't keep their hands off each other, can they?" I had chuckled. I remember thinking that their open displays of affection were the kind of thing you would likely see in the streets of Paris, where it's pretty common to see people publicly kissing. We watched the couple through the course of the evening. The woman was facing my direction, so I recognized her at once. I could see she was having a good time laughing. A lot of snuggling up to her boyfriend was going on. In that moment I felt rather envious, wishing my boyfriend could have taken me out like this, and regretting the fact that he was so busy this evening with all the hard work he had to do. I persuaded myself that Will was right. In the end, his hard work would ultimately pay off, as after all we wanted to spend the rest of our lives together. I recognized the girl as Stella Montreuer. She possessed those stereotype good looks that I'd always admired. At this time her mystery boyfriend was facing away from us, but he looked surprisingly familiar. Where did I recognize him from, I wondered. From the back view he looked a little like my boyfriend Will. I was eager to see who Stella Montreuer appeared to be dating. Finally the man waved an arm at a waiter, and made that squiggly sign in the air, indicating that he wanted to pay the bill. The waiter nodded, and went scuttling over to him, with the bill and his portable credit card machine. The bill was efficiently paid, and when the couple rose to their feet and got up to leave, the man turned around to take Stella's small hand firmly in his. Stella looked incredibly happy. She was wearing such a bright, contented smile on her face. Her skin was prettily flushed, as if she was blushing. Maybe she was slightly embarrassed because of all the canoodling the couple had been doing in the corner, like a couple of frisky teenagers getting caught behind a couple of bushes. I was admiring how pretty she looked in her bright red tank top dress she was wearing, with the shoestring straps, that for a brief moment I didn't even look at the young man in her attendance. I think it's because young women naturally compare themselves with other women. When I did look at the young man that was holding Stella's hands more clearly, I very nearly fell out of my chair in astonishment, my mouth dropping open so wide that I could have practically swallowed a large goldfish without any problems. For a moment I thought my vision was badly impaired, so I narrowed my eyes to focus more clearly on the couple. But there was no doubt what I was seeing was real. I realized the young man holding Stella's hand, like an adoring husband with his wife, was no other than my boyfriend Will. No wonder his back view had been so astonishingly familiar. How did I fail to recognize it was actually him? How could I be so imperceptive, I wondered. How could Will even do this to me? I was filled with a kaleidoscope of colourful emotions, from hatred to horror and abject disgust. This could not be happening to me. I had to be dreaming. I had to be. Any moment I would wake up and realize that this had all been a fictitious dream. "What's wrong?" Carol asked me, as she saw my face pale. "Toyah, your face has gone as white as a ghost. I didn't think it was possible for you to get more pale." I stared incredulously at my boyfriend Will, barely recognizing him anymore. I realized in this unforgiving moment the full treachery of his deceit. The horror hit me like a brick across the face. Will was cheating on me with Stella Montrea. And the worst part of it all, they looked so happy together. In that moment I was steaming with indignation, like an iron left on a board, burning a big hole in a shirt. "Carol, can't you see? It's my boyfriend Will, it's him! He's been the one smooching in the far corner of the restaurant this evening. He's the one cheating on me with Stella Montrea. I didn't realize it was him. I didn't recognize him from the back view. How dare he treat me like this? I'm not a doormat he can walk all over." "Oh my God, it is him," said Carol, cupping her hands over her mouth in astonishment. This time Carol's face had gone as white as mine. She was as visibly shocked as I was. She turned to me, and in a low hissing whisper, she stated the blindingly obvious. "Oh my goodness! Will is bloody cheating on you, Toyah! This is absolutely insane! I didn't think he was a cheating type. It just goes to show you can never be sure of anything, can you? My mother always warned me, it's the quiet ones you need to watch. I'm in so much shock. Look at me," she said, pointing at her arm. "I'm physically shaking." If Carol was shaking, she was in very good company, as my whole body was jiggling in indignation. I had never felt so much anger before, like I did in this moment. It was literally seeping through every single cell in my body, like rainwater dripping through a crack in the ceiling. I was potentially like a firework that was about to explode in any given moment. I was as mad as a hatter, and being naturally composed and easy-going by nature, this new, rather incongruous emotion seemed to have taken possession over me. Carol hissed at me. "Don't confront him here, Toyah," she said earnestly, making a pleading face at me. She reached over the table to grab my upper hand, as if premeditating what I was about to do. "You don't want to cause a scene in front of all the diners here. Please don't, Toyah. It'll be very embarrassing. You can confront Will later, when we get out of the restaurant, but please, not here." I didn't hear my friend's very salient words. They were obsolete and sounded just like white background noise to me. I was in my own little bubble now, and right now I didn't care what anyone thought of me, or whether I caused a scene or not. I needed to confront Will and make him fully accountable for what he had done. I was going to make him pay for this, like dragging a dog back to its vomit and rubbing its nose right in it. I could not contain my unbridled rage. I would describe myself as a little like an uncontrollable wild mare, kicking around in a stable block, begging to break free. Will's words of betrayal about the ton of work he had to complete that evening were brazenly ringing in my ear all over again. "Sorry, babe, not tonight. I've got a ton of work I need to complete." Will was nothing but a big fat liar. Here he was cavorting with Stella Montrea, and there was no mistaking that the couple were having an affair behind my back. How long had this even been going on? From what I discerned in the restaurant, they seemed incredibly comfortable with each other, so they must have been seeing each other for quite some time. I felt nauseously sick to my stomach, and the hot chili I'd eaten earlier this evening was threatening to make a reappearance. I was so angry that I began to dash towards Will, like a bull in a ring, charging towards the matador's red flag. I blocked Will's pathway to the exit of the Mexican restaurant. Everyone that was dining at the restaurant was obliviously unaware that I was offering their Friday night some dynamic entertainment that they would likely be talking about in the days and possibly even weeks to come. Who doesn't appreciate drama? And if these restaurant customers wanted drama without having to tune into a podcast to get it, they were going to get it in spades, and they would not be remotely disappointed. In my mind's eye, I could see the customers nattering with their friends. "You'll never believe what happened at the Mexican restaurant. This young lady blew a gasket with her ex-boyfriend. When she discovered he was cheating on her with another woman, she created quite a scene. It was terribly entertaining. I guess I did just that, as I lunged towards Will, slapped him squarely on the face. "What do you think you're doing, Will?" I snapped. "How dare you?" I growled at him contemptuously. "How dare you?" "Toya," he said, stammering sheepishly, while the whole restaurant's undivided attention was now focused on the scene unfolding before them. "What are you doing here?" "What am I doing here? Is that all you can say?" "I might ask you the very same question, Will," I said scathingly. "More to the point, what exactly are you doing here? I thought you were working and were far too busy to take me out. But I see you weren't too busy to take out Stella Montreya. Looks to me like you've had a very cosy time together, canoodling there in the far corner of the restaurant, like a couple of lovesick teenagers. Shame on you." "It's not what it looks like, Toya. I promise you. Me and Stella here, we're just very good friends. We know each other from campus. Nothing untoward is going on between us. I was just getting her advice, that's all, on a project I happen to be doing. I didn't tell you about it before because it's work-related, and I didn't want you to get the wrong impression." "Oh, I see. So you get advice with another woman by canoodling with her in the corner of a restaurant, do you?" I said sarcastically. Nice, Will. As if I believed that for a second. You're ridiculous." "What exactly's going on here?" asked Stella, furrowing her brow. "What was all this you were saying, Will, about me advising you on a project? That's insane. You were doing no such thing, and you know it. Why are you lying to this woman? Who is she anyway?" she asked, staring at me with wide, questioning eyes, as if she was directing the question at me and not Will. "You mean you don't know who I am?" I asked her. "I know you. You're Stella Montreya. I've seen you around campus dozens of times. My name is Toya, and for your information, Will and I have been together for 4 years. Will raised his hand in a defensive gesture, almost as if he expected Stella Montreya was about to spit fire at him. But instead she stood there, looking rather bewildered and confused, like someone who's lost their way and is trying to find their bearings in a strange city. "Don't listen to her, Stella," Will interjected. "This woman is crazy. She's not right in the head. She doesn't know what she's talking about. Let's go, shall we?" he said, grabbing Stella's hand and trying to abruptly push past me to get the hell out of the Mexican restaurant. He was obviously physically squirming and didn't feel remotely comfortable about this confrontation, especially with all eyes in the restaurant conveniently focused directly on him. Stella shook off Will's hand, as if shaking water off her skin. It was clear she was not going to be persuaded to leave the restaurant until her questions were finally answered. She remained rigidly stiff and refused to be cajoled by Will in any way. Her pretty high-heeled red shoes remained anchored to the carpet, as if she was docked there for the night, like a boat in its mooring site. "But of course I do know you," she said, pointing a finger at me. "Yes, I remember you. I've seen you around campus as well. I recognize your face. You're not exactly the kind of person one would easily forget. You're quite striking looking, with your fair skin and Tahitian colouring. So what's this about your being with Will for 4 years? How can this be so? I've been with Will for 2 years. We've been talking about getting engaged together." "You've been with Will for 2 years?" I repeated, my jaw dropping open so wide I could have caught flies on my tongue like a chameleon. "That can't be right. I told you, there's no mistake. I've been with Will for 4 years, I insisted. 4 years, said Stella. You've been with Will for 4 years? Is this true, Will? Please tell me it's not. Stella turned around to look directly at Will. Her hands were now firmly parked on her hips in a resolutely determined gesture, like someone who's no pushover and was not going to be fobbed off by ambiguous excuses. "I can explain, Stella. It's not what you think," said Will, stammering awkwardly, his cracked voice betraying his guilt. "I just didn't have the heart to break up with Toya. You know how it is.
Toya's a sensitive soul. She takes things to heart. But it's been over between us for a very long time."
Stella looked astounded, dumbfounded even. I think everything that was unfolding before her had shocked her to the core, as if now she was beginning to believe she was in some kind of simulated reality. "Are you being serious?" she said, repeating herself again and again, in the vain hope that the script of my words might be changed. She was clearly in shock. She looked me up and down questioningly, repeating again, "Are you telling me you really have been dating Will for 4 years? Is this some kind of warped sick joke? What the hell is going on here? Will someone please tell me that this is all a nightmare from which I'm about to wake up? Why is she talking like this, Will? She says you've been dating for 4 years. She doesn't look like the type that would make stuff like that up. Please tell me that none of this is true." "She's not joking," said my friend Carol, coming to my defence as a third-party backup that would iron any lingering doubts away very quickly. "Toya and Will have been an item for 4 years. I know this because I hang around them a lot, as the miserable third party, so to speak. Last year Will actually asked Toya to marry him, but she said she wanted to wait a little longer before they eventually tied the knot. I hate to break it to you, Stella, but they have been going out for that long. It is true." Stella turned around to look at Will with a killer glare that would have made a Portuguese man of war tremble in his own jelly.
"Look, it's not what you think, Stella. I'm not remotely in love with Toya,"
he said, pointing at me, as if I was the turd at the bottom of his shoe that he'd had the grave misfortune to stand in.
"It's you I've always wanted. It's always been you, Stella. Yes, I was dating Toya. She meant nothing to me. Hand on heart. It's just as I was telling you a moment ago. I did not know how to break up with Toya. She was so desperately in love with me. You know what it's like. I didn't have the heart to hurt her feelings. I just couldn't find the right moment to tell her the truth, that it was over between us. I knew she wouldn't take it terribly well, but I was working my way around to doing it. I promise you that."
"Oh, my heart bleeds for you, Will," said Stella sarcastically, making a contorted face. "You couldn't break up with Toya, could you? Because you never intended to break up with her in the first place. You were stringing us both along. You disgust me, Will." Stella suddenly hit Will across the cheek so hard that he very nearly lost his footing and almost fell backwards, while everyone in the restaurant began to clap, whistle and cheer, when Will had been exposed as the cheat that he clearly was. "You've said enough, Will. Said far too much tonight, and I don't want to hear any more. As far as I'm concerned, you are nothing but a big, fat, gluttonous liar. You didn't want to break up with Toya any more than you wanted to break up with me. You're an egomaniac, enjoying the attention of 2 women devoting their affections on you. You were using us both to suit your own ends. That is seriously sick." Stella spat on him contemptuously, almost as if he was a lower form of pond life. "You're a lecherous jerk. Last weekend you told me I was the love of your life. The worst part of it all was I believed you, Will. More fool me. I cannot believe I was such a gullible idiot. I thought you were the love of my life, I really did. But you've taken me and Toya on a wild goose chase. If you really loved me, as you claim you did, you would never have chosen to cheat on me. You don't know the meaning of the word love, Will. You used me." "He also told me I was the love of his life last weekend," I interjected. "It was actually on Thursday, the day he was going to meet up with his brother Ernest in town. He was telling me how he couldn't wait for us to get married." "My God!" said Stella, putting her hand over her mouth in abject astonishment. "He told me last Thursday the same thing. He was telling me he wished we could get married soon. What a jerk!" What Stella did next had everybody roaring with laughter, as she kicked Will straight in the groin, and he buckled over and winced in pain.
"Bloody hell, that hurt, Stella!"
he gasped, looking at her in horror and clutching himself, as if she was the one that had betrayed him, and not the other way round. "Good, I hope it really hurt. You deserved that, you bastard," said Stella. "You absolute bastard. And to think that I was foolishly envisaging spending the rest of my life with you. What a complete idiot I am."
"You go, girl," said a man standing up from a nearby table and clapping his hand. "Men like him give us decent guys a bad reputation, but I promise you, we're not all like him."
The other men cheered in agreement. Stella put her hand through my arm and turned around to glare at Will. "I don't want anything more to do with you, Will. Get out of my life." "You heard her," I snapped triumphantly. "She wants nothing more to do with you, you nasty cheat, Will. I wasted 4 years with you, and for what? It's over between us, and if I ever see the likes of you again, it'll be too soon." My friend Carol took my other hand, while Stella had my arm on the other side. Carol seemed to thoroughly enjoy the drama that we'd caused in the Mexican restaurant, when she'd done her level best to avoid it in the first place. "You heard them, Will," she cried out on our behalves. "Did you hear that? They want nothing more to do with you, and rightly so." Will was now hobbling awkwardly out of the restaurant, like a wounded soldier, looking desperately sorry for himself, as if life had dealt him a very bad, rather unfortunate blow that he didn't believe he deserved. His face had grown as red as a field of poppies, as he'd been badly humiliated this evening, and subjected to being ridiculed in front of everyone in the restaurant, and no one had any empathy for him whatsoever. He was clearly still cowering from the pain he'd received in his groin, but no one cared a jot for him, and the waiter practically shooed him out of the restaurant, as if he was an unwanted cockroach that he'd seriously like to stamp under his boot. Everyone in the restaurant, privy to the scene, continued to whistle and clap, calling Will a prize cad.
"Good on you, girls," came another man's voice. "He doesn't deserve either of you."
Ostensibly, after that dramatic scene unfolded at the Mexican restaurant, it would have been plausible to assume that we'd never hear from Will again, but how wrong we were. He contacted both Stella and myself a day later, sending us both a text to tell us individualistically that we were the loves of his life and that he couldn't live without us. I know this because we both compared our texts together. We had received exactly the same text messages, word for word. It made us roar with laughter. "I think Will is what you call it," said Stella, trying to search for the word. "A narcissist," I said. "Yes, that's it. A narcissist. He was dating us both at the same time. I don't think he had any intention of breaking up with you, Toyah. He wanted us both." "You think so?" I'd asked. "Absolutely. He wanted to stroke his own ego, didn't he? Like a big, fat, contented cat that drinks 2 sources of milk instead of 1, because it's not just satisfied with that 1 bowl of milk. For him, he enjoyed having 2 women adoring him at the same time, like we did so foolishly. Never again," she said, shaking her head furiously, "never again am I ever going to be taken in by a man like that." She continued, "The worst part of it all, Toyah, is I think many people here at the university knew exactly what was going on and about Will's treachery to us, but no one warned us about him, did they?" "What on earth is wrong with people?" said Stella. "They should have told us what was going on, don't you think?" "Maybe they didn't want to get involved," I suggested. "Perhaps they were confused as to who Will was actually dating. Or maybe they were just so caught up in their own personal lives, rather than concern themselves with someone else's. I mean, my mother used to live next door to this couple when she was in her early 20s. It was before she actually met my father. She knew the man was cheating on his wife. The woman was out of town a lot of the time, attending business conferences. And when she was away, the husband brought his lover around. My mother never mentioned a thing to the lady. She didn't know her well, you see. She thought it wasn't her place to interfere, so she did nothing. She was, of course, tempted to put a note through the letterbox and say, 'Your man is cheating on you,' but she didn't even know the woman's name. In the end, the woman returned home from her conference earlier than was expected, and I guess she caught them in the act, as my mother observed her kicking her man out of the house. She observed the whole thing." "I suppose that's it," Stella agreed rather miserably. "People just don't want to interfere, do they? But I wish to God I'd known what was going on. I hate to think of all the time I wasted with that loser." "You only had 2 years with him," I reminded her. "I was stuck with him for 4 years, and I didn't know what he was really like." "That's true," Stella admitted. "You're worse off than I was, Toyah. Not that that's any consolation, of course. We're both mugs, that's all I can say. Next time I'm going to be very astute about who I date, even if I have to do a background check on the man, and I'm not kidding about that either. Stella and I both became inseparable friends for the remainder of our time at university. It would seem that in our adversity we had formed a very strong relationship. Unfortunately, Stella had to go to France for a couple of years, where she'd be working with a world-famous fashion designer to produce clothing, so we kept in contact, and by the sounds of things she was in no hurry to return to America, and had fallen madly in love with a Frenchman called Pierre, who she assured me was the salt of the earth. I reminded her that some Frenchmen have a wife and a lover at the same time, rolled into one, but she assured me that was not the case with Pierre. "He hates infidelity," she told me. "His parents have been together for 20 years and are still so much in love." I was pleased to hear Stella's good news, of course I was, and happy for her, if not a little envious. As for Will, I never heard from him again, and I didn't want to either. That ship had long since sailed and outstayed its welcome, and I hoped it would never again stop in the harbour of my life. Then there was, of course, my great friend Carol, but she'd gone off to Italy for 3 years, so I felt dreadfully abandoned by my friends, and awfully alone. It was quite a dark time for me, I have to say. It was when I began my new life living in New York that one day I stumbled onto Candace quite by chance, although she did admit she'd seen me before. Apparently she'd been determined that if she ever saw me again, that she would approach me in some very subtle, unobtrusive way and initiate some kind of conversation, in the hope she could ask me out on a date. "When I saw you," she later confessed, "I knew you were the one for me. My heart actually skipped a beat. I broke out into goosebumps. You were the most beautiful girl I'd ever seen, with your fair skin, blue eyes, and Titian colouring. I was completely smitten." On that late, unassuming morning, I had been grocery shopping, at the store, with a basket in my hand, studying the avocados on display, and being rather challenged into deciding which one to put in my plastic bag. They all appeared to be very ripe, and for the life of me I didn't know which ones to select, as so often when I returned home, I'd open up an avocado, only to find it was badly bruised on the inside, and only good enough to be thrown away in the trash and promptly discarded. When Candace saw me, she came over to my side. She gave me a bright, warm, cheery smile. There was nothing about her that made me believe she was gay. She was like the typical girl next door. She had shoulder-length hair that was heavily highlighted, styled in a sleek, very stylish but easily manageable bob, golden-coloured skin that was acquired from spending some time in the sun, and pretty, very expressive brown eyes, framed by luxuriously thick dark eyelashes that were definitely not the fake kind. Candace was wearing trendy combat mustard-coloured boots on her feet, with red laces, ripped jeans, and a casual sweatshirt in pink that had something to do with cancer awareness. Well, that's what she told me later, anyway. "You're looking for the best avocado, I can see," she said. "You're probably wondering which one to choose, aren't you? That won't be bruised, am I right, or am I right?" I chuckled. "You're right," I admitted. "For some reason I'm terrible at choosing avocados. I always seem to get the duds. Don't ask me why. Don't worry. This time you're going to be lucky. Help is at hand. I know all about avocados. Do you want to eat it today or in a couple of days' time, as it will determine the ones I choose for you?" "Well, I want to eat one tonight and a couple over the next couple of days," I said. "Gotcha," said Candace. "You want one that's ripe right now and the other to become ripe in the next couple of days." She began to fastidiously inspect the avocados, one by one, confidently choosing the correct ones to put in my bag. "The softer one is the one you need to eat today," she told me. "Thanks," I said. "You're a real lifesaver." "It's only a pleasure," she said. We both parted ways, and I continued to shop. But as I exited the store, I bumped into Candace on my way out. I thought it was by accident, but on her part it had all been strategically planned. "Oh, there you are again," she said. "Fancy running into you like this. It must be serendipity, as they say." "Thanks for helping me out with the avocados," I said appreciatively. "I'm looking forward to eating the ripe one when I get home. The best way to eat avocado is on toast with black pepper, I find. I like it with crispy bacon and a poached egg. That combination is my favourite. I tell you what, said Candace, it's almost 12 o'clock. I don't know about you, but I'm starving hungry, especially with all that mention of food. Would you be interested in joining me for a spot of lunch? Or do you have a significant other waiting for you back at home? No, I'm not married, I said. I live alone. Well, in that case, how about we find a place where there's an avocado on the menu for you? If you like it so much, that is. We could go to a Taco Bell if you like. They specialise in guacamole. Or anywhere else you fancy. It'll be on me, of course. You're not doing anything, are you? She asked me, looking hopeful. What Candace failed to realise was that I was going to be spending a lonely weekend back at my apartment. So her offer of lunch was gladly welcome. What harm could it do? Maybe we could finally become friends. So I accepted her kind invitation, not knowing where it would ultimately lead. I didn't know Candace was gay, although she told me soon enough, over lunch, when she told me all about her ex-girlfriend. How long were you together? I asked her. 6 years, said Candace. It was a serious relationship, but Ruth didn't want to commit. One day I discovered she cheated on me with another woman. I was totally devastated. She told me she didn't love me. She claimed I was far too possessive and overbearing. Can you believe that? That's horrible, I agreed. I mean, you were with her for 6 years. I know. 6 years is ages, isn't it? Said Candace. I really thought that we had it together. You know what I mean? I thought we were set up for life. So I decided to give Ruth some time to come to her senses. I was hoping she'd soon realise how much she missed me. But she ended up marrying her new girlfriend. The two of them have adopted 2 kids from China. I'm sorry, I said. That must have been tough on you. It was, Stella agreed. It was my idea for us to adopt children in the first place. And then Ruth went and did this with another woman. In the end, I had to get on with my life. But it's been very hard. I can imagine. Have you always known, that you were gay? She laughed. You can say it. You don't have to be reticent about that. Of course I've known. I've never been in denial of my sexuality. When I was 10 years old, I was madly in love with a girl in my class. I never looked at the boys, so I guess I knew back then. I had no way of knowing that the first lunch that I enjoyed with Candace would open the doorway for many more outings. Little did I know that my so-called seemingly serendipitous meeting with Candace in the grocer's store would change the trajectory of my entire life, almost as if I am standing at the crossroads, deciding which path I should ultimately take. One weekend after I'd lived with Candace for many months, she had mentioned her desire to meet my parents. I was naturally apprehensive about such a rendezvous. I was unduly worried that Candace would blab about her romantic feelings she had towards me, that on my part were never reciprocated. I was worried how my parents would react to her, but in the end I agreed to take her to visit them, on the condition that she didn't tell them that she was gay. What I didn't know was that Candace would make it very clear to my parents that she was wildly in love with me. I had warned her that my parents were strict Catholics and that under no circumstances was she to let them know about her romantic affiliations towards me, as it might cause them upset. Of course not, babe, she had loyally promised me, slapping me jovially on the back and giving me a light peck on the cheek. I wouldn't dream of upsetting your parents. As far as they're concerned, we're roommates sharing a flat together. But that is what we are, I reminded her. I keep telling you, Candace, I'm not gay. I'm not going to change. You're the one that wants me to live with you, even though I'm never going to become gay, like you want me to. I can't be something I'm not, Candace. Oh, for goodness sake, Toya, do you want to go there again? You're in denial. It's so fierce. But I told you, it's kitty steps all the way, one day at a time, until you're ready. We've got all the time in the world to get serious. I sighed in frustration. How many times had I told Candace that I was not gay? But she refused to listen. I knew she didn't want to let go of me, and her insufferable intense feelings towards me were a cause of great concern. I will never forget my mother's wary glances when she saw Candace stroking my back at the lunch table. I shifted uncomfortably in my seat and squirmed inwardly with embarrassment. Candace knew I didn't like being touched, and yet she was making an open display of affection in front of my parents, which was very disquieting indeed. When my mother wasn't looking, I briefly turned around to her and glared at her, whispering to her, "Don't touch me, Candace," but she simply grinned at me like a Cheshire cat who seemed to want to make mischief. "Did Toyah tell you how we both met, Mrs. Bouquet?" she asked my mother. "No, she didn't," said my mother. "That is an interesting question. I'm very glad that Toyah met you. She really does need some girlfriends. Her best friends went overseas, so she's been on her own. So I'm very glad you two crossed paths. How did it happen?" "Oh, it was so romantic, Mrs. Bouquet," Candace gushed. "Your daughter was struggling to choose the right avocado at the store. I went over to help her. It can be a tricky business looking for that perfect avocado. Some of them can get badly bruised during transit. And believe me, I know my way around a stack of avocados with relative ease. I rarely ever pick up a dud." My mother's face visibly paled. She and my father quickly exchanged rather bewildered glances. I could see my mother's jaw visibly stiffened. She probably wondered if she'd heard right, for she assumed that Candace was just a good friend of mine, that I'd simply invited along for lunch that day. Now she was privately wondering if our relationship was different to what she'd first perceived. I imagined, being a strict Catholic, this news was not going to be ingested easily by her. I had warned Candace about this, and yet her faint promises that she had made me were flying out of the window like the wispy smoke from a chimney. Why was she toying with my parents like this? This was not kind of her. "How nice," said my mother, her words sounding insincere. "I know Toyah is very partial to avocado. Even as a little girl she'd have it on toast for breakfast with plenty of pepper and salt. Isn't that right, Toyah, dear?" I had nodded lamely, wishing the entire ground would swallow me whole. "Yes, I've always liked avocado," I said in a tight, clipped voice. Why was Candace doing this to me, I thought? Why was she making it blindingly obvious how she felt about me? We were only friends. Our relationship had never entered the romantic phrase, and I was sure it never would. I told Candace over and over again, "I don't think I'm gay. We're the best of friends, but I don't think it can ever be more than that between us." Candace had chuckled. "Change the record, why don't you, Toyah? Your indomitable resistance is adorable, but you're not fooling anyone, least of all me. You really don't want to admit the truth, do you? When it's staring you blindingly in the face. You are gay, my girl. But don't be afraid of that. As I said, we'll take our relationship slowly. I think your upbringing has made you extremely reticent. Some people take years and years to come out of the closet. Some women have been married to men for an entire lifetime because they haven't had the courage to admit that they're gay. Even in this more open generation, people are coming out of the woodwork very slowly. But one of these days, I'm hoping it'll be you. Honestly, Candace, I don't know where you get this idea that I'm gay from. It makes no sense to me at all. You always say that I'm gay, but I think I would know if I was, don't you? And I think this is wishful thinking on your part, because it's never going to happen, I'd retorted. You need to find yourself a magic lamp from Aladdin's cave to turn me into a gay person, because that's never going to happen. So I understand, Candace, said my mother rather gingerly, that you and my daughter share a lovely apartment together in Manhattan. Is that right? Toyah's told me all about it. My mother was obviously fishing for more information about the true nature of our relationship. She was probably silently praying it wasn't what Candace seemed to be implying. Candace, of course, was only too delighted to shout from the rooftops that we were an item, although I would never have described us in that light in a million months of Sundays. Well, yes, we've been living together for a few months now, said Candace proudly. We've become inseparable, haven't we, Toyah? She reached out to hold my hand in hers, which I quickly pulled away, giving her a contemptuous glare. She knew my parents were strict Catholics, and seemed eager to tell them that we were a couple, when she knew that that was not true. Why was she being so deliberately provocative? as if she got some kind of rush about setting a cat among the pigeons and causing much upheaval. With a glowing face, Candace looked at me with sickening, adoring puppy dog eyes that at one time had made me feel rather cherished and special, but not any more. Now her idiosyncratic behaviour was making me feel nauseously sick, as if I was stuck in a confined claustrophobic space that was making me feel as if I couldn't breathe. I'm very, very glad, Mrs. Bouquet, that Toyah agreed to move in with me. It was a monumental decision on her part. It took me much persuasion, let me tell you, but in the end she agreed. I'm so lucky that she did. Don't you worry, Mrs. Bouquet. I'm going to take very good care of your daughter. I want to make her incredibly happy. She'll never want for anything, and that's a promise. My mother looked as if she was about to spit out the roast chicken she was eating that went down the wrong way, so that she began to violently choke, and my father had to slap her back and hand her a glass of water so that the chicken could go down the right way. Excuse me, Candace. I'm very sorry about that. That was not terribly pretty to watch. I think the chicken I ingested went down the wrong passage. I do apologize for my very bad manners. Don't worry, Mrs. Bouquet. I promise you, you don't have to apologize to me. After all, you're almost family. If the food that you ate got badly trapped, I'd have got it out for you very quickly. I've been trained in the Hynek maneuver, you know. I did a life-saving course once. One of the best things I ever did. When they say knowledge is power, it's absolutely true in my experience. I saved someone once when they got sausage stuck in the back of their throat on a cruise liner. This guy had overloaded his whole plate. He was eating like a half-starved dog. He was literally stuffing sausages down his throat, as if he couldn't eat the food fast enough. And then suddenly his face went all pale, very white. I could see he was choking to death on that sausage. Nobody else appeared to notice. They were completely oblivious to what was going on right under their noses. I quickly ran over to him, did the Hynek maneuver, and the piece of sausage went flying out of his mouth, hitting an old lady square in the face. I hasten to say she wasn't desperately impressed, but I saved that man's life. In the end, he gave me a big gift certificate on the cruise liner, as a way of saying thanks. I was so glad to have saved that man's life. It was a great feeling, you know.
Well, that is quite a story. I can imagine how the old woman reacted when she got sausage in her face. It is rather amusing. But goodness gracious me, isn't it incredible to think that a piece of sausage could potentially kill you if it went down the wrong way? But I can absolutely believe it. So with your being around, I'm definitely in safe hands when it comes to ingesting anything. Would you like any more roast chicken, Candace? There's plenty to go around, said my mother, pointing to the tray of carved chicken on the table. There are also some cheese and bacon grits if you like, and plenty of cornbread if you're still hungry.
Mrs. Bouquet, what can I say? You're an excellent cook, the very best. The food has been absolutely delicious today. Your mashed potatoes are the fluffiest and creamiest I've ever tasted. If I eat any more, I will quite literally pop, Mrs. Bouquet. I'm just so pleased to meet the both of you finally, because you both could potentially become my in-laws. So I needed to meet you, and I'm so glad I finally talked Toyah around, because she's been avoiding my meeting you for some reason. She's told me so much about you both, though.
Oh, well, I hope everything she's told you is good, said my mother, raising a brow.
All very good, said Candace, although I'm afraid Toyah did fail to mention what an excellent cook you are, Mrs. Bouquet. And as far as these grits of yours, they are the most delicious I've ever tasted. I knew you were a Southern belle, Mrs. Bouquet. It seems I was right on the money about that.
My wife is an excellent cook, Candace, my father interjected, giving my mother a cheeky wink. I would have married her for her mashed potatoes alone, he teased, but it seems I got the whole package.
I don't blame you, Mr. Bouquet. Anyone can see your wife is a catch. Now I know where Toyah gets her beautiful good looks from, her Titian colouring and her porcelain complexion. Like mother, like daughter, as they say.
Well, you got it right. My wife is indeed a southerner. But, believe it or not, she's descended from the Basque people. I don't know if you've ever heard about them before, Candace, said my father proudly. Most of them have rhesus A negative blood. That's because of the red hair and the fair skin. That was why, when my wife was pregnant with Toya, she had to have a special injection to stop her from miscarrying, because if her baby wasn't the same blood group, her body would have rejected it, as if it was a foreign body. Isn't that fascinating? But yes, the red hair and the blue eyes is the kind of look I like in a woman. I find it incredibly feminine.
Me too, Mr. Bouquet, said Candace. Why do you think I was so attracted to your daughter in the first place? When I saw her, I just fell in love. Straight away. When Candace said that, I felt like a seared octopus. This conversation was not going at all well. Candace had let the cat out of the bag, allowing my parents to know how she really felt about me. What were they thinking? I could see my mother and father had yet again exchanged worried, rather bewildered glances together, and I could only imagine what was going on in their heads. Were they wondering if I was gay? I really didn't want them to believe that. I have nothing against gay people, of course, but if you're not that way inclined, you feel naturally affronted when people get your sexuality all wrong. After my mother cleared up our plates, she said, Toya, I would really appreciate a helping hand if you don't mind with the dessert. But of course, Mum, I said, raising myself up from the chair. I'd like to help if I may, Mrs. Bouquet, said Candace. Absolutely not, Candace. You're a welcome guest in our home, and I won't hear of it. But I will appreciate Toya's help with putting ice cream on the pudding plates. You do like homemade ice cream, Candace, do you not? Oh, I love homemade ice cream, Mrs. Bouquet. That sounds absolutely brilliant. Good. We're having apple pie with ice cream. Sounds yummy, Mrs. Bouquet, said Candace appreciatively. I adore apple pie, and served with homemade ice cream. It couldn't get better than that. What on earth is going on with the two of you? Said my mother, once we were safely confined to her kitchen. She was glaring at me, with her hands firmly parked on her hips. Candace is all over you like a rash. You're not really in a relationship with her, are you, love? She put her hand on her heart, as if trying to still its rapid beats. You're not gay, are you? I won't be angry if you are. A lot of people are coming out these days about that kind of thing. Being that way inclined has become pretty mainstream. But I've got to admit, love, you are the last person I would imagine being gay. To have a relationship with a woman, I mean. If you will forgive me, love, this is quite hard for me to digest. My face became so red, I could feel my cheeks burning. Mum, please calm down. It's not what you think. Candace and I are just good friends, even though she seems intent on leading you up the garden path to make you believe otherwise. She's done the same with me. My mother grabbed me by the hand. Don't lie to me, Toya. I'm not an idiot. Anyone can see that woman is completely smitten by you. You're living together in an apartment in Manhattan, and by the sounds of things, it's very luxurious. From where I'm standing, this doesn't look at all good. You do know how I feel about gay relationships from a religious perspective, but you are my beloved precious daughter, and I love you regardless of whether you're gay or not. And I will continue to do so and support you in any way I can. But I don't want you to lie to me. That is something I cannot abide. Mum, relax. You don't have to lie to Dad about anything, because I'm not gay and I'm telling you the truth. There's one problem, though. Candace believes I am gay.
Say that again, love, said my mother, who seemed to have suddenly grown hard of hearing.
I told you, Mum, I'm not gay, but Candace keeps telling me I am. She says I'm in denial because of my staunch religious upbringing that makes me unable to come to terms with my true identity and who I really am. I find it really strange, Mum, because I'm definitely not attracted to her, or to any other woman for that matter. I keep telling her that I'm not gay, but she refuses to listen or to believe me. She keeps telling me she's heard it all before. that I'm lying to myself, and that I've indoctrinated myself into believing I'm straight, when actually she says I'm bisexual."
"Does she now?" said my mother, growing white with indignation. "I think, my dear, you would know if you were gay or bisexual, don't you? I think Candace is highly manipulative, love, very intense, and it scares me half to death that she's making you believe that you're something you're not. It's like she's trying to brainwash you into believing you are gay for her own ends. I suspect she knows very well you're not gay, but she's hoping you'll be malleable enough so she can mold you into the way she wants you to become. I think she wants you to become gay to suit her own needs. She's trying to make you that way inclined. Can anyone make the colour black turn white, and vice versa? I think not. Unless, of course, you're talking about hair dye. Then you can."
"That's what I said to her, Mum, but she's insistent I'm in denial. She makes me doubt my own sexuality, Mum."
"Well, you're not in denial, Toyah dear," said my mother, putting her hand on her head in frustration, and staring at me through wide, confounded eyes. "Why is it, Toyah, that you get yourself embroiled in these dreadful, sticky, rather precarious messes? This could only ever happen to you. Let me tell you, Universal Studios should ask for your life story, and they could literally make a movie out of you. First, it's that young man cheating on you for 2 whole years, and now you're living with a woman who's trying to persuade you that you're gay. You can't make this stuff up, can you? I've never heard anything more ridiculous in my entire life. Candace is fixated on you, Toyah, and this situation is treacherously alarming, if not very dangerous."
"Don't worry, Mum. I've not been intimate with her, if that's what you want to know. She's a good friend to me. She says she'll be patient about all that. But there's no way I can go down that road. No way at all, because I'm not gay."
"Sweetheart, wake up and smell the coffee, will you? You're living with a woman in her fancy apartment. She's made it clear she's looking after you. So my guess is that she's paying for everything. She's trying to take ownership of you, and she will make you feel indebted and obligated towards her. That's part of her plan, I'm sure. And before you know it, she'll weave her way into your life with a forceful ferocity, and there will be no escape for you. This could be a very dangerous situation. There are stories, you know, Toyah, about people like the Candaces of this world in crime reports. Obsession can make people do outrageous things. You need to get out of that environment, love. You can't continue sharing an apartment with her. Because if you take advantage of her financial hospitality, in the end she will use it against you. She will remind you of how much you owe her, and how indebted you are to her. I'm worried about you, Toyah dear. On the surface, Candace seems like a benign, charming woman. But I think there is a dark, insidious side to her character. I hope I'm wrong. A side that she's hiding very well from you. I mean, why on earth is she living with you when she is very aware that you are not gay? And I'm sure she is aware of that. It beats me she has her heart set on you. Why doesn't she go for another gay woman who is genuinely her way inclined? Why does she pick you? I don't like this one little bit. It's giving me a very uneasy feeling. And the way she was going on this evening about us being her potential in-laws, there is no doubt she has her mind set on marrying you one day. This is very scary, love. You need to take this very, very seriously.
You're not suggesting that Candace would harm me, Mum? Is that what you're saying? I asked, my eyes growing wide in alarm.
My mother looked rather worried. I think that Candace is a nice enough girl. At least I hope she is. I'm just saying, watch your back, love. I don't entirely trust her. You know you can always move home with us if you feel remotely apprehensive about anything. And if it's money you need, you only have to say the word. You could go and get your things and come home at once if you like to live with us. The choice is yours. I'm not going to impose my will on you. But leaving Candace will probably be the best decision you could ever make.
I'll sort it out, Mum. I think you're absolutely right. I need to tell her it's over between us. But believe me, I've told her hundreds of times, but she refuses to listen. You don't know what she's like, Mum. She can be doggedly stubborn. My mother looked very affronted by what I was saying.
Oh, dear, dear me, Toyah. Why do you get yourself into these dreadful messes? Honestly, I don't even know how to help you. I don't think she's going to take the news well when you end it with her. You need to be very careful, love.
My mother's words rung into my head like a warning bell. I knew she was right. Candace was obsessed with me, and this was not normal behaviour. She wanted more from me than I was willing to give. Look, Candace, we need to talk, I said once we arrived home at her apartment after we'd been to my parents'. I don't know what was going on at lunchtime today, and the way you were trying to make my parents think we were an item. I warned you about that. I told you that they're very religious, and that they wouldn't like the idea of me being gay, which you know I'm not. So why would you do a thing like that? Why would you make them think all that stuff about me? Oh, don't be so paranoid, Toyah, for God's sake. Your parents needed to know how we felt about each other, and I didn't think it did any harm to let them know that you were very special to me. What is wrong with that? I just don't think this is working. I really don't, Candace. Because I'm not gay for a start. I think I should move out. I don't think we should live together any more. Candace rolled her eyes. For God's sake, Toyah, change the record, will you? How many times do we have to go over this? With you, it's like playing Groundhog Day a zillion times. I'm getting bored of this, Toyah. The following morning, after Candace had left for work, and I had taken a day off from my job because I intended to go and have my hair done, but now a hair appointment was the last thing on my mind, as I had more immediate pressing concerns. I was privately wondering if I should just pack up my suitcases and move out, as far away from Candace as I could possibly get. It would mean leaving my job and just going on the run, as I didn't want Candace to retrace my footsteps. I loved living in New York, of course I did, but sometimes you have to do what you have to do to get out of a difficult relationship. I sat there in Candace's apartment on my bed, because sometimes you have to do what you have to do to get out of a difficult relationship. I was sobbing my heart out as I considered what I should do, and the truth is I really didn't know. Moving out was a very big deal. I was so comfortably settled in the apartment. I loved my life here in this plush neighbourhood, but my relationship with Candace had reached the end of the road, and I knew I needed to leave. As I was contemplating all of this amidst my tears, there came a surprising knock at the front door. I was tempted to ignore it, but I had been asked by Candace to stay in early in the morning, as she was expecting an express delivery that she'd ordered online. It was an aquarium light for her 50-litre rather exotic fish tank. The knocking was persistent, as if the person had no intention of going away. I was certain it must be the delivery man. Damn, I thought. I really wanted to be left alone to meditate on the kindest way to end my relationship with Candace, who seemed to refuse to listen to a word I said, and I knew if I upped and left, she would somehow manage to find me and worm her way back into my life. I trotted over the gleaming oakwood floor towards the door, and opened it rather reticently. A handsome man was standing there in the doorway, with a huge grin on his face. "These are probably for you," he said, holding his bouquet of roses in his hands. "You are Toyah Bouquet, are you not?" "That's me," I said, taking the roses from him rather reluctantly. I knew at once who they were from. Candace always sent me roses when I mentioned that I wasn't gay, or suggested that I'd like to leave. I suppose it was her way of shutting me up, and making me feel rather bad. I frowned as I took the roses from the young man, and then suddenly, against my will, tears spilled down my cheeks. How dreadfully embarrassing this was! I was making a huge scene in front of this stranger who didn't know me from a bar of soap. I was making a spectacle of myself, and I just couldn't help it. "Are you all right, ma'am?" he asked me, "because if you don't mind my saying, you don't exactly look it. Most people, when they receive a bouquet of roses, are usually happy, but you are not." Don't worry about me, I said, trying to laugh. I'll be fine. It's just been a bad morning, that's all. I must have got out of bed the wrong side. You know what it's like.
Are you sure about that?
Said the young man, reaching out to give me something to sign.
You don't look all right. You look quite distraught, actually. Your dog didn't die, did he, by any chance?
No, that didn't happen. I don't happen to own a dog.
Whew, that's a relief. When my dog died, I was incredibly distressed. I quite literally shut myself away for an entire week. I loved that dog.
You did?
I did, he admitted. I'm very soppy like that.
It's funny, I said. You're not the usual delivery man that comes here. The one from the Rose and Glen flower shop, are you?
No, I'm not, he grinned. I'm stepping in for my friend. His wife runs the Glen flower shop, and he does the deliveries. So even as I speak, his wife is now in hospital delivering a baby, with her husband stoically at her side. So me, being a prize mug, that I am, agreed to help him with his deliveries this morning. But this is the last one of the day, I'm glad to say.
You're a good friend to him to do that. Thanks for these.
You don't look happy to receive those roses, if you don't mind my saying so. You look quite affronted, as if the roses themselves offend you.
It's not the roses. I actually love roses. They're my favourite flower. It's the sender. It's a long story, I said. You really don't want to know the half of it.
I'm a good listener, and if I listen to your troubles, I won't have to concern myself with my own. You know the saying, a trouble shared is a trouble halved. I tell you what, do you know the coffee shop over the road? Artful Aromas, I believe it's called. They do a mean chocolate lava cake, and when I say mean, I mean mean. That stuff melts in your mouth like butter. If you want to join me in the next 10 minutes, I will be there. And the lava cake and anything else you have will be on me. I will buy you as many pieces as you like. When my dog died, my mother brought me to Artful Aromas to get their cake. And I didn't want to go. In fact, I refused. But when I ate that chocolate lava cake, I was a new man. The world seemed like a brighter place, almost instantly. So I know that chocolate lava cake will lift you out of the doldrum. My mother always says that, when she's in a dark place, her go-to pick-me-up is that chocolate lava cake. It works a treat. It did for me. No wonder chocolate is considered the gift of the gods.
Your mother's not wrong. Chocolate can save your life. It has mine from time to time, you know, when I've been in a bad place. But I have tasted the Artful Aromas chocolate lava cake, and you're right. It is the absolute best.
There you go, then. I think that chocolate lava cake is calling your name. Surely you can't resist, said the young man. So I'll see you then, he asked, as I signed the delivery.
I'll think about it, but I'm liking the idea more and more. I said goodbye to the young man, sure that I would likely never cross paths with him again. I was hardly going to join a perfect stranger for chocolate lava cake at the coffee shop. It was not the kind of thing that I was partial to doing. I glanced briefly at the note on the bouquet and let out a huge, exasperated sigh. I love you, Toyah, with all my heart. You're my entire world. All my love, Candace. I felt so miserable as I read the note. Candace knew how to use emotional blackmail to her full advantage to get exactly what she wanted out of me. In my indignant anger, I threw the bouquet of roses across the floor. They scattered and broke into a confetti of petals and broken stems. Before I knew it, I picked up my purse and made my way down the luxuriously carpeted corridor, all the way to the sleek avant-garde glass lift. The young man who had delivered my roses had been so nice, I persuaded myself, what harm would it do to have a delicious piece of lava cake with him? I was alone in my apartment, not knowing what to do about my current dilemma. It would be good to have a listening ear. And besides, the thought of indulging in some chocolate lava cake was very appealing indeed, and was an invitation I could no longer resist. Besides, it would be good to get out of the apartment for a while, and the coffee shop was an uplifting place where for a brief moment you could cast your cares away and pretend you were someone else And that didn't have to be a bad thing, did it? Before I knew it, I'd crossed the road and entered the coffee shop. I glanced at my cell phone. It was 11:30 a.m., and there was a hub of activity going on in the shop. I could smell coffee beans, and when I glanced at the little round tables covered with red and white check tablecloths, the young man got up and was waving at me enthusiastically. His face lit up as if he was genuinely pleased to see me, which made me smile. "Someone's keen to see you," said the waitress, gesturing for me to follow her. She handed me and the young man a menu and hurriedly scuttled away. "Be with you in a second," she said. The young man was standing and gesturing for me to sit down. I lowered myself into a very comfortable upholstered wrought-iron chair. I removed my jacket and put it on the back of the chair and hung my bag on its side.
"I wasn't sure you were going to come," said the man, "but I'm very glad you did, and I really mean that. I thought I was going to have to eat the chocolate lava cake all on my own, without good company, and that would be a travesty," he said, making a face. "Chocolate lava cake needs to be eaten in good company. I've had quite the entertaining and eventful morning, delivering flowers to people. That part of this job I didn't mind at all, but I hate being a delivery man. It's really not nice. I hate being caught up in traffic. I find that part of the job incredibly unpleasant."
"Well, I can imagine. I don't think I'd have the patience. So you're wondering why I came, are you?" "It was the chocolate lava cake that brought me here," I teased. "I couldn't stop thinking about it after you left."
The man chuckled. "And to think I thought it was my charming personality that you thought was so irresistible. But it was the chocolate lava cake, as it always is. That's exactly what my mother would say. If chocolate is on offer, you can pretty much get her to do almost anything." "Oh, I am sorry," said the young man. "I do apologize for my rudeness. Where are my manners? I haven't introduced myself to you yet. The name is Flint Chevalier."
"Wow, that's an unusual name. I've never met a Flint before."
"It's my mother," Flint chuckled. "She wanted to call me something rather unusual. That is easy on the tongue, if you know what I mean. And she figured out that Flint could not be shortened. But your name is Toyah, is that right? I saw it on the paperwork for those roses. So you have an unusual name as well, much like my own. It can't be easily shortened. And that's a good thing."
"That's right."
"I like it. It suits you very much. So how about that chocolate lava cake?"
he asked as the waitress approached our table, with an expression of expectation on her face.
"What are you going to have?" he asked me. "Your chocolate lava cake, but what are you going to have with it? May I suggest a double thick chocolate milkshake? Those two go hand in hand together superbly."
"How can I resist? That sounds great." After the waitress had scuttled away, Flint said to me,
"Are you going to tell me, Toyah, what's been eating you up? You can tell me to mind my own business if you like. But in my experience, sometimes telling a stranger what is ailing you can be an awfully big help."
"But why do you even care?" I asked. "I don't even know you. Aren't there enough problems in the world than to go worrying about other people's? That's why I think half the people in the world don't want to listen to the news. They don't want to be weighed down with all that negativity. And you know what? I agree with them wholeheartedly. I never listen to the news myself. If there's a war going on somewhere, I tune out. I don't want to have to be grieving other people's tragedies, because it will just make me sink into a deep depression."
"It's a funny thing that you should say that," said Flint, "because I agree 100%. For a start, I never tune in to mainstream media, because they tell us what they want us to hear. They're highly manipulative, lie all the time to suit their own ends. But like you, I don't want to tune into the world's troubles. As like the Titanic, it will take me down. But do you know what I find, Toyah? In my experience, when I'm talking to someone like yourself, when I learn about your troubles, mine don't seem half so bad."
"You troubles? You don't look as if you have any," I said, looking at Flint skeptically. "You look like one of those people that has all the answers and has your life all sorted out so perfectly."
"Well, don't be so easily fooled. Appearances can be very deceptive. Believe me, I've been through some stuff, and I've got a few issues that I'm dealing with right at the moment, if you must know.
So go on, tell me. What's eating you up? Then I'll tell you what's eating me. Don't you think we've got a deal?
Deal? Well, you know, let me tell you. All right, here goes. I work for a large corporate company. My boss happens to be a woman.
And you've got a problem with that, have you?
Of course not. But, unfortunately, she's got the hots for me. She's a married woman and is constantly making advances at me, making it very clear that she fancies me.
Oh, I think I know where you're going with this. You're worried that if you reject her advances, that you can forget any promotions.
That's pretty much it. But then I came up with what I thought was a fabulous idea. I told her I was a very happily married man. It was the best thing I did, because she stopped making advances at me almost at once.
Well, there you go then. Your problem's all sorted out.
No, it's not. It's only just started. You see, there's an office party. Pretty soon, it's coming up in the next week or so. We're expected to bring our significant others along. She keeps saying to me she can't wait to meet my wife. But what am I going to do? Because I haven't anyone to bring along with me. And when she sees there isn't a woman on my arm, claiming to be my wife, she'll know I've been lying all along. And I'll be back to square one, because then she'll begin to prey on me again.
Do you even like her? I asked curiously.
Absolutely not. There's nothing charming about her whatsoever. She's vulgar, uncouth, and dresses completely tastelessly. She's mutton dressed up as lamb. The woman's in her 40s, for goodness sake. I'm half her age.
You're kidding me. That's pretty brazen of her. But you're right. If you turn up at the office party without a wife, she's going to know you're lying.
My point exactly.
I'll do it for you, I said impulsively. I'll pretend to be your wife if you like.
You will? I don't know what to say.
Well, I'm quite a good actress, you know. And besides, it'll be fun. So there, your problem's all sorted out.
Well, I don't know how to thank you. You've quite literally saved my life. Now, are you going to tell me your problem or not?
I proceeded to tell Flint all about my issues with Candace. I told him how I was living in a luxurious apartment with her, how she was insistent that I was gay, when I so obviously was not, how persuasive she was, and how I tried to leave her, but she had become like a stumbling block to me.
Bloody hell, said Flint. Oh, I must apologize for my rude language. But you've got problems. This woman is seriously fixated on you. You've told her you're not gay, and that hasn't worked. Do you by any chance happen to know how Candace ended her last relationship? That might give you a clue on how you should end your relationship with her.
I took a sip of my rich creamy chocolate milkshake and bit into the chocolate lava cake. This is excellent, I said. Oh, it's delicious.
It is too.
Do you know, the last thing I want to do, Flint, with all this sweetness in my mouth, is to talk about Candace. Let's see. Candace was besotted about this woman, that she dated for about 6 years. She was very much in love with her, wanted to spend the rest of her life with that woman. But the woman cheated on her with another lady, and then ended up getting married to the woman she cheated with. So Candace was completely devastated about that. It hit her really hard.
There you go, then. That's your escape route. You need to do the very same thing. You need to let Candace know that you've fallen in love with somebody else. That way she'll be forced to let you go. How about I pretend to be the person you've been having an affair with?
You mean you'll tell her that you're my boyfriend? You'd actually do that for me?
Well, you're pretending to be my wife. Why should the offer not be returned to you? I should extend you exactly the same courtesy. What do you say?
Well, it's a brilliant idea. But do you think we can actually pull it off?
Of course I do. I don't even have to pretend, because I really like you, Toyah.
I blushed. Do you know, I think it might just work, your plan, I mean. Because if I have someone else, then what can she do about it? I mean, she couldn't do anything when her ex-girlfriend was with another woman. She actually remained fixated on her girlfriend for a long time. even after the woman got married. Candace has a hard time letting go, if you know what I mean.
That's why we need to be cruel to be kind. It's horrible to have to pretend and to lie that you've cheated on her, but it's the only way she might let go of her possessive grip over you.
I agree, but she's not going to take it at all well. That was the way that Flint came into my life, and we fell for each other hard, and genuinely became an item, without even having to try. Within a month of dating, we'd actually moved in together. I would normally have been reluctant about such a hasty decision, but I'd never met anyone quite like Flint before. When I took him home to meet my parents, my mother warmed to him at once.
"You've struck gold, love. He's a keeper."
It was very bizarre how things just worked out for us. You'd think I'd be relationship shy and very reluctant after my 2 catastrophic relationships before, but I just knew that Flint was good for me. I felt terrible telling Candace that I'd been seeing somebody else. That had gone down like a lead balloon. I felt very bad lying to her like this, but I knew that this was the only successful out for me. I could see no other way in cutting the cord between us, because she would successfully always drag me back if I chose to break up with her and went my own way. I'm glad to say that Flint was very convincing. He played his part as the besotted boyfriend quite masterfully.
"I'm in love with Toyah," he told her. "We did not want to break this to you, but it is what it is. I'm very sorry, Candace."
"But how could you do this to me, Toyah?" said Candace. "We were so good together." "No, we weren't, Candace. We were only ever friends. Surely you get that. I told you I was never gay. I never have been. You refused to accept it." I had played my part in helping out Flint in persuading his boss that I was his wife, and she completely believed me. She was no longer making advances towards Flint, but had set her eyes on a handsome young junior member of staff, so Flint felt rather guilty about that someone else had to be subjected to his boss's amorous flirtations, but at least it wasn't him. 2 months later, Robert Bayshaw.
"I have been a private investigator for many long years. I was asked by Candace to spy on her ex-girlfriend, a young lady called Toyah Bouquet. 'What is it you want me to do, ma'am?' I asked my client, who had agreed to pay me handsomely.
"I want you to follow Toyah around for me. I want you to record where she goes, what she does, who she's with, and I want you to see if her relationship with this young man called Flint is actually legit."
"You mean you want me to find out if they are actually dating? Why would you want to know this, ma'am? I thought you said that your ex-girlfriend cheated on you with this man. So it's obvious they're dating, is it not? What do you really want to know, ma'am? I don't see how I can possibly help you. I'm a private investigator. I'm not exactly God. I can't tell people who they can and cannot date, if you understand what I'm saying."
"Of course you're not God, and I don't expect you to be either. I need you to follow Toyah around to glean the truth, that's all. I believe my girlfriend was fobbing me off. She's very afraid of her true, authentic feelings towards me. She's one of those people that is in the closet, refuses to come out, if you know what I mean. She comes from a strict Catholic background, where being gay is taboo."
Candace rolled her eyes in exasperation.
"I've been so patient with her, I really have. I haven't pushed myself on her in any way. I've given her time to acclimatize to who she really is. But her parents are stuck up and rigidly stiff about their opinions over everything. I believe their conservative influences have been instrumental in making Toyah the way she is. She's reluctant to be her true, authentic self."
"So you think Toyah is gay, do you? And is not willing to admit this to herself? Is that what you're saying? I fail to see how I can help you here, ma'am."
"Well, I think she's bisexual. She is still head over heels in love with me. I know she is. I'm not going to give up on her so easily, just because she's in denial about her true feelings and her sexual identity. I think when we went to her parents' house, they came down on her hard like a ton of bricks. And now she's trying to resume being straight again. That's why she's going out with this Flint. I don't believe she loves him for a moment.
Look, ma'am, I fail to see how my following a woman around who has issues with her sexuality is going to help you in any way. As I keep telling you, I'm a private investigator, and I can't see how that is going to help you. I'm not God. I can't change her sexual leanings. Candace let out another sigh.
I'm paying you very well, Mr. Bayshaw, do you not agree? What are you complaining about?
Ma'am, I'm not complaining about anything. But I am still not fully aware of exactly what it is you want me to do. Yes, you want me to take pictures of Toyah, photographs of Toyah and Flint. I get that. But what is the purpose of my investigation? I don't fully understand it.
Mr. Bayshaw, I will spell it out to you, shall I? I want you to record where Toyah goes, who she's with. I need you to record her mood. Is she happy? Is she sad? I want pictures of her with Flint. I want to know how serious their relationship is. Is that too hard to understand?
So you want me to follow this couple around, take photographs? Is that it?
Yes, Mr. Bayshaw. Finally you get it. Is that easy enough for you? Can you do that for me?
It seems pretty straightforward, ma'am. But I think it is something you could possibly do yourself. But as you are paying well, I'm not going to look a gift horse in the mouth. That would be a foolish thing to do.
Good, I'm glad you get it. I just want Toyah back in my life, Mr. Bayshaw. I need to know what's going on in her life, so I can discern how to proceed from here. I mean, if her relationship with Flint is serious, I'll have to call it quits, won't I? But I'm hoping it just may be a casual fling. Maybe he means nothing to her at all. And that's what I need you to find out.
I see, ma'am. You want me to find out how serious the couple are.
Exactly, Mr. Bayshaw. Do you get where I'm going with this?
I think so, ma'am. I do understand what you want me to do, but you are paying a lot of money for something that is very, very simple.
But I don't care. I need to find out the truth. The money isn't the issue for me, Mr. Bayshaw. I just need you to do your job. That's all I'm asking. Do you think you can do it?
It shouldn't be a problem, ma'am. I'm glad to help you as much as I can.
Well, I'm glad to hear it, Mr. Bayshaw. Consider yourself hired, then.
It was because of Candace's impetuous demands on me to follow Toyah Bouquet around that I found myself in the Catskill Mountains of all things. I had learnt that Flint had a grandmother who lived there in a house in the woods. The couple were spending a few days with the elderly lady. I gleaned this from one of Flint's work colleagues, working at the French bank with him. He told me that Flint was very close to his grandmother and would frequently stay with her for a few days in the Catskills. This time he had taken Toyah with him. That, in my book, already suggested very clearly the relationship was a lot more serious than Candace had previously first implied. Maybe she really was hanging on to a lost hope. And I hate to say this, but I rather suspected she was. So this would not exactly be good news for her. I was not in the habit of sugarcoating the truth to my clients. They all needed hard, cold facts from me. And as brutal as they may be to digest, I always presented them with the truth. In my line of business, I had more than frequently than I cared to recount been the bearer of very bad tidings to the people that recruited my services. But let's face it, by the time most of these people hire me, they've already resigned themselves to a less than agreeable truth. All this goes hand in hand with the job of being a private investigator. I had asked this work colleague of Flint's at the French bank, a man called Roland Williamson, who let his reserve down very easily after I'd insisted on buying him a few drinks at the local bar. Let's just say the information literally seeped out of the man as easily as putting butter on a steaming corn cob, as his reticence just slipped away. Ostensibly, this friendly, happy-go-lucky man spoke to me very casually, very nonchalantly, about Toyah and Flint's relationship. It really is amazing how people are willing to talk to you after you ply them with a few drinks. Their inhibitions go flying out of the window, I find. Roland told me in a hushed tone of voice, so that no one could eavesdrop on our conversation, which was rather ironic, because he was confiding in a stranger. He revealed that Flint was completely smitten by Toyah. I don't want to talk too loudly, he explained to me, just in case the ears around this bar are wagging. You have no idea how rife office gossip can be. Everybody wants to know everybody's business, if you know what I mean. Of course I do, I said. Roland knocked back another few glugs of his beer, and made an unfortunate burping sound, which made him chuckle rather than apologize, so I just chuckled back with him. Let's see, where are we? You were asking me about Flint's relationship with Toyah, is that right? That's right. Do you know how they met? I asked. I do, as it happens. Can you believe it? Flint met Toyah when standing for his friend as a delivery driver. It was a special favor. It's funny how you can meet people. His best friend happens to own a florist with his wife, so Flint stood in for him for a day, while his friend's wife was having a baby at the hospital. That's how he met Toyah, delivering roses to her front door and getting her to sign for them. He said he knew the moment he saw her that she was the one for him. He said that to you? I asked. He was that taken by her? Absolutely, said Roland, chugging back more craft beer and making another unfortunate burp. Flint is not the type to believe in love at first sight, believe me. But he said when he met Toyah, there was something innocent and fresh about her that made her stand out from the crowd to him. She was upset when he delivered the roses to her door. He could tell she'd been crying for quite some time. She looked quite distressed. He got the idea of suggesting some chocolate lava cake would make her feel a whole lot better. He said he was going over the road himself to the artisan cafe for some chocolate lava cake, and that she was welcome to join him. She told him she'd think about it. In truth, he thought she was being polite, and that she'd never show up. But he got the shock of his life when she actually did. He said in that moment his heart began to do leapfrogs. And it was in the artisan cafe that they seemed to connect, if you know what I mean. So that is how they became inseparable. It's a wonderful relationship, I have to say. In the beginning he was a self-confessed bachelor, Flint, you know. And just when he'd given up on meeting anyone, Toyah comes along. Roland chuckled. He pointed to a very brassy-looking woman in the far corner of the bar. You see that woman over there? The one that looks like mutton dressed up as lamb? Throwing herself at that young man? You see her? Yes, I do. It's the young man I feel sorry for, I said. The poor man looks out of his depth. That woman is Flint's boss, I'll have you know. She was into Flint big time, until he told her he was married to Toyah. She believed him, and thank God she did. She thinks Flint is married, so she stopped making advances at him. Flint was terrified of her, and worried that if he didn't respond to her, she would stop him from getting promoted. She's a married woman, you know. She should be ashamed of her behaviour. She's like a scavenger the way she eyes all the men in the office. It's not safe with her around, let me tell you, especially if you're a good-looking young man. There's something to be said for having a beer gut like myself, said Roland, rubbing his stomach contentedly. That woman would never give me a second glance, and thank God for that. Poor man, I said. He doesn't look remotely happy. May I ask you another question, Roland? Of course you may ask. Ask away. You're buying all the beers, so how can I refuse you? You think they will get married? I asked with interest. I'm talking about Flint and Toyah, of course. Is it that serious? It's only a matter of time, said Roland. I'm in no doubt that Toyah, who is a stunning woman, with reddish hair and fair skin, will marry Flint. She's down to earth and friendly. I went out with them one evening, you know, for a meal. The energy between them was absolutely electric. They're good for each other, and I've never seen Flint look so happy. These days he goes around the office with a smile so big, I'm surprised it even fits on his face. And what about Toyah? Do you think she's as equally smitten about Flint as he is about her? I asked. Oh, definitely. It's obvious she's totally taken by him. As I was saying, the energy between the two of them is electric. And since they've been together, they've been inseparable. I guess if it works, it works. They moved into a flat together over the weekend. They're spending a few days in the Catskills with Flint's grandmother. Flint has never taken a girl to his grandmother's house before. That's why I know it's serious. His relationship with Toyah, I mean. He'd never introduce his grandmother to anyone he didn't really care about. Do you think Toyah could be bisexual? I asked rather coyly. I get what you're asking. You mean, does the pendulum swing both ways? Asked Roland, chuckling. Absolutely not. Toyah is straight as a pencil. She'd never be interested in another woman like that. Why do you even ask such a preposterous question? I just wondered, I said. I gleaned a great deal of useful information from Flint's work colleague Roland, but I had to take photographs of the couple for my client. I was a hard-working private investigator, working on behalf of my clients, and what they wanted, I would give them in spades if need be. Yes, I've met people as obsessed over a love interest as Candace. In my time, that is. I had a client once whose husband had asked her for a divorce, and she had got me to follow his girlfriend around all over the place to find out the details about where she worked, where she had her nails done, and so forth. Much like Candace, she wanted photographs, and dozens of them, of the couple together. When I presented them to her, and she saw the photographs of her husband embracing another woman, she went quite manic. I even got afraid of her myself, the way she reacted. She screamed and tore up the photographs and finally told me that my services were no longer required, and thank God for that. Perhaps the evidence had given her some warped kind of closure, where she had come to terms with the tragic truth about her husband's new love interest. Sometimes reality can serve a cruel blow. I suspected Candace was much the same. A very intense young woman, with more money than sense, that was completely obsessed with her ex-girlfriend, whom she claimed was a gay woman, refusing to admit her true sexual identity. Whether this was true about Toyah or not was of no real concern to me. What Candace really wanted to know was how serious Toyah's relationship was with Flint, and she needed photographs, and that's what I would give her. I had learned from many of the people I spoke to at the French bank that Flint was crazy about Toyah Bouquet. Some even thought that they were married, but I knew differently. They were living together at his flat in Manhattan. I had gleaned they'd gone to stay at his grandmother's place in the Catskills. I thankfully found the address. The grandmother's house was buried among a labyrinth of trees on a sizable, heavily wooded lot. As a private investigator, this was my very worst nightmare. I had managed to follow the couple around the town of Catskill, taken some rather ambiguous snapshots of them walking away with grocery bags in their hands. But those snapshots were very benign and were not satisfactory. I needed some more substantial snapshots of the couple interacting together, so that my client Candace could glean how serious the nature of their relationship was. So hopefully she would find the closure in which she was seeking, and hopefully move on with her life. In truth, I felt sorry for anyone who ended up involved with Candace. She was a difficult woman, of that I was in no doubt. I was also sure they'd feel smothered by her. I wondered if this was the reason that Toyah had left Candace, or could it be that she'd never been gay in the first place? In my book, that was a distinct possibility. I parked my green, easily camouflaged four-wheel drive very discreetly on a back muddy dirt road, wearing a pair of very good walking boots on my feet. I trespassed onto Flint's grandmother's property rather easily, edging my way cautiously through the trees. Sometimes a man's got to do what a man's got to do. And it's amazing how a good paycheck can be a good motivating factor, especially when you've got a family to feed with 2 children that go to private schools. And let's not talk about the crazy, incessant amount of money it costs to educate them. I needed these photographs to satisfy my demanding client, and come hell or high water, I would get them for her. My wife Anna didn't appreciate the kind of work I did for a living. All the sneaking around certainly did not float her boat, but I was always quick to remind her there were worse jobs that I could be doing out there. "What is worse?" she demanded. I told her crime scene cleaners had a raw deal cleaning up body parts and blood. And what about working in a landfill site? That's got to be a nasty job. After I said that, she promptly shut up, and thank God for that. I guess I'd made a rather reasonable point. I could not help wonder about my client Candace. I wondered if she would rather be like that client of mine that tore up the pictures of her husband with another woman. Or would she discreetly cut out the pictures of Toyah to keep them exclusively for herself, so she could superimpose her own images on them and block out Flint? Believe me, I've seen things in my time that would make most people's hair curl. Human beings can be fascinating, idiosyncratic creatures who can do absurd things, especially when they're fixated on another human being. And I'm often hired by people who are paranoid they are being cheated on, or they simply want to know what their other half gets up to while they're away at work. It was a magnificent, beautiful, and prepossessing day, with the soft sunshine casting its shimmering light through the eclectic mix of tall, lofty trees, their outstretched boughs proudly covered with pretty leafy green foliage, while some trees were of the evergreen variety, standing up rigidly straight and erect. There was a cool breeze blowing against my face as I entered the string of trees that would ultimately lead to the house, where hopefully I might be able to observe the young couple, if they happened to go out of doors for a while, which I hoped they would. Hopefully I could get some good photographs of them. If need be, I could clandestinely creep around the house, peering into windows, hopefully catching the couple in a compromising position. Those photographs are the very best. But it would be unlikely for that to happen, I thought, given that Flint was staying with his grandmother and was likely to be on his best behavior. If my wife knew the measures I sometimes resorted to get those photographs, she would be absolutely appalled. So the less she knew, the better. As I've got significantly older, I've been a lot more reluctant and rather reticent about peeping into people's windows, in case I get caught. Because let's not kid, it's a high-risk thing to do. I was once called a peeping Tom by a very angry old woman when I was caught in the act of peering into her window. I had a lot of explaining to do at the police station, but thankfully the police let me off. They probably appreciated how tough it is to get those compromising pictures when you're a private investigator. You certainly have to have your wits about you. I was feeling a tad apprehensive, I have to say, and I wasn't exactly sure why this was the case. All I can say is something felt distinctly off, and a strange, rather impending feeling of dread overcame me, along with the feeling of being watched. This is the kind of feeling you do not want to experience as a private investigator. I am supposed to slink in and out of situations without even being observed or noticed. I've always been sharp on the uptake and very aware of my immediate surroundings, so I knew that the uneasiness that overcame me could not be in my imagination. The wood growth itself was a labyrinth of trees that stretched so far and wide, like an all-encompassing yawn. The path through the trees was a higgledy-piggledy chaotic mess, overgrown and treacherous. Burgeoning roots whipped through the forest floor, indiscriminately, in a knotty squiggle of limbs. It really was a minefield. Any of those roots could potentially drag me down, with very little effort, which was very disquieting. I had unfortunately scratched myself against some sharp, thorny briars. Damn, I said to myself, why the hell wasn't I wearing long sleeves? I could feel that my skin had broken. Blood was running down my arms in a red trickle. Too bad. I'd deal with it later. I was clueless as to where I was going, but I followed my compass in a northerly direction, so I could easily locate the house. I stopped short in my tracks when I came to a tree, covered in people's shoes, hanging indiscriminately all over the branches. There were hundreds and hundreds of these things, all tied together with leather strings. Women's court shoes, sandals, sneakers, boots, of every shape, size and colour you could imagine. They were hanging on the branches like the baubles on a Christmas tree. Goodness gracious me, this was weird, I thought. I took a photograph of the tree because it was oddly like a strange work of art. I examined some of the shoes, inspecting them with my hands. Some of them were so dated, they looked like they went back to the early 40s and 50s. I then stumbled quite by chance on a couple of trees in the ground, not far from the tree where all the shoes were hanging on it. They'd been planted upside down and were clearly dead. It was very sinister. I'd never seen anything so weird and peculiar in my entire life, and in truth I had no idea what to make of it. I couldn't help but think it was all very menacing and menacious. I had this awful, bodeful feeling that I was not welcome in this place, that something wanted me gone from the woodgrove. In fact, the woods seemed to become darker every second, as if the light of the day had been expunged. Everything just spoke of something being seriously off, but I refused to allow my mind to indulge in such fanciful thinking. Believe me, I would have happily retreated on my steps, returning to my car. But I had a job to do. I was a professional, and I fully intended to accomplish my goal. I couldn't allow an uncomfortable feeling to make me scurry away like a frightened rabbit, diving back into its burrow. All of a sudden, the overwhelming feeling of being watched was so treacherously palpable that I almost felt that someone was right there under my nose. But as I circumnavigated the trees with my beady, very attentive eyes, I observed absolutely nothing. Of course, it was incredibly difficult to see anything in this untamed thicket of dense, very messy vegetation. I had to skillfully focus on putting one foot after another, so I didn't trip and lose my footing. And if I did not seriously guard every step I took, I might end up becoming a victim to the forest's wrath, as branches reached out to grab me. All of a sudden, I heard a low growl. I began to panic. I knew the growl was directed at me. I could hear words in my head. "Get out! Get out!" Was that voice in my head or not? It didn't seem to be my own. Was I going completely mad, I wondered? Was I losing it? I couldn't see anything, but I knew that something was there, and my blood went icy cold. I stood there, unable to move, and locked in the moment, with my camera swinging around my neck. That was when I saw something, a big flash of black through the trees. What the hell was that? A silhouette of Herculean proportions, built like a giant. I also caught a flash of yellow eyeshine. I quickly looked away, edging myself gingerly forward, not really thinking exactly about where I was going. At this point, my head was pounding inside my chest like a jumping jack. I was filled with a desperate urgency to escape these woods as quickly as I could. I just needed to get out of here. I was much closer to Flint's grandmother's house than to my own car, so I knew I'd make a dash to her house and hopefully take cover there. I looked back to where I'd seen the dark silhouette, but then nothing was there. I was beginning to doubt myself, doubt what I'd seen. Maybe I hadn't seen anything at all. Maybe I was imagining things. But then, standing between the trees, I saw him. The most enormous Bigfoot. I saw him very clearly, and he wanted me to see him. Of that I am in no uncertain doubt. I could feel this marvellous creature's incandescent rage as he kicked the ground with his ponderously powerful feet, waving his furious fists at me. The dark eyes that leered into mine were filled with extreme indignance. I was in no doubt that this monstrous, wrathful creature wanted me dead. I knew it with the whole core of my being. Was I ever going to escape this monstrous beast with my life? It seemed highly doubtful. This Bigfoot was the most terrifying creature I have ever beheld. There are no words to describe how intimidating, ferocious, and fearsome he was. Once again I heard in my head, "Get out, or I will kill you! Get out!" I was so terrified that I wet myself. I could feel the moisture trickling down my legs. That was the least of my concerns. I tried with all my might to wrestle my way through the trees, away from this hideous thing. And then, to my horror, my worst fears were confirmed when it gave me chase. I hasten to say that every single second that I was pursued by this mighty, imposing Bigfoot felt like my entire life had been reduced to mere seconds. I now knew, without a shadow of doubt, that I was going to die. The Bigfoot roared as he chased me. He threw a stone after me, and I jumped out of the way. He continued to roar at me and run after me through the trees. I stumbled and fell over a rock. I couldn't believe my bad luck. I'd lost my footing. I went tumbling to the ground. Now I knew I was a goner. The Bigfoot stopped in his tracks, watching me as I awkwardly scrambled to my feet. I threw my camera at him as way of a distraction. It landed at his feet, and I think it was my saving grace, as a curiosity consumed him, and instead of chasing me, he dropped to his knees and was momentarily distracted by the camera, examining it, so that gave me somewhat of a head start. I could hear the Bigfoot making these deep guttural nasal sounds as he ummed and ahed over my camera. With wide, terrified eyes, I quickly glanced over my shoulder. I could see the Bigfoot was trying to make sense of my camera. He was probably wondering what it was. For a moment it appeared to hold his intrigue, but not for very long. He grew bored and threw it to the ground with a thunderous, mighty crash. That was expensive camera equipment that would cost me a fortune to replace. The Bigfoot roared, and his fists pummelled his chest like a silverback gorilla, as if establishing his dominance. Then he continued to give me chase. I continued to run through the trees. I found myself on Flint's grandmother's driveway. I was running with the Bigfoot behind me until I managed to reach the front door. I slammed it with my fists as hard as I could. "Help! Help! Let me in! Let me in! Please, help!" To my relief, an elderly woman came trotting to the door, but she was taking her time about it. "Hurry! Let me in! Hurry! Open up!" "Goodness gracious me, young man! Did I not tell you I was coming? Couldn't you exercise a little patience? I'm not as young as I used to be. Did you have to knock so loudly like that? I'm not hard of hearing, you know. Why is it that everybody automatically assumes that the moment you get old that you're deaf as well? I assure you, my hearing is very acute." Ma'am, there's a Bigfoot in the woods. It's chasing me. It was going to kill me. I think he's still out there, ma'am." I ran into the old woman's house with a presumptuousness that I adopted only because of my fear. I raced to a window and cried out, "Look, ma'am, he's over there on your driveway, looking in at us. Have you got a rifle, ma'am? That thing needs to be killed. It's highly dangerous. I think you should call Fish and Game at once. You saved my life, ma'am, by letting me into your house, and for that I'm very grateful. I was living on borrowed time, let me tell you, with that thing giving me chase. I spoke to the old lady breathlessly, my heart galloping so fast in my chest, I would have easily put the horses at that Kentucky Derby to shame. The woman took me in, scrutinizing me up and down. "You're in quite the state, love, aren't you? You look as if you've been dragged through a hedge backwards, if you don't mind my saying so. What did you do to your arm? You're covered in blood. You've got scratches all over your arms." I ignored the old woman's comments. "It's over there, ma'am. Can you see it? The Bigfoot." I pointed to the window, and sure enough, the formidable Bigfoot stood there on the driveway, looking directly at the window where I was standing. Staring back at us he was. He was shaking his head and giving me a formidable stare. "Eh, you're talking about Bosun," said the old lady. She chuckled. "He gave you a scare, did he, love? Don't worry about him. He's harmless." She went over to the window and waved at the Bigfoot. I could not believe my eyes. To my astonishment, the Bigfoot waved back at her. Then he turned around and glided back into the trees, swinging his arms backwards and forwards. "You know the Bigfoot?" I asked, taken aback. "He waved at you. You're not telling me you're friends with that monster? He tried to kill me, ma'am. He's seriously dangerous. You're acting like it's no big deal. That thing chased me through the woods. I thought he was going to kill me. If you hadn't opened up your door in time, I could be dead right now." The woman chuckled again. "You're a funny one, young man. You do overreact. I told you Bosun is completely harmless. He'd never have hurt you. Mind you, he does have quite a grumpy temper if you rub him up the wrong way." "You think I'm overreacting, ma'am, do you? I think that thing was going to kill me. You claim to know him." "Of course I know Bosun. He's lived on my property for years and years. We happily coexist together. He's very protective of me, you know. And, of course, his tree. He can be quite cantankerously moody, as I was saying. Did you do something to upset him, perhaps? I can see he looked a bit peeved with you." "Peeved with me, lady? That Bigfoot was more than just peeved at me. He was going to kill me. I went for a walk through the woods. I wasn't doing anything wrong, and he gave me chase. I've never been so scared in my entire life." The woman frowned. "This is my private property, I hope you realize. Did you not know that you were trespassing on private land? I don't think Bosun would have taken that too kindly. He doesn't like strangers wandering around in the woods. He's very protective of those woods, you know. But that's not the reason he would give you chase. But he'd certainly watch you to make sure you weren't going to harm me in any way. You must have done something to provoke him to anger. I'm just trying to think what that could be. You didn't touch his tree, did you? That would set him off into quite a tangent, let me tell you. Bosun does not like anybody daring to touch his precious tree." "I'm sorry, ma'am. What are you talking about? What tree is this?" The woman's face softened. "My name is Laura, young man. You don't have to call me ma'am. You didn't by any chance touch Bosun's tree, did you?" She repeated the question. "It's his pride and joy. He loves that tree. It's covered with all kinds of shoes, hundreds of shoes, boots, sneakers, you name it. He loves that tree. I used to throw out all my shoes, you know, but Bosun collected them all from my dustbin. He started hanging them up on the tree. He has such a fascination for shoes. I give him all my old shoes and pick the odd ones up from thrift stores. I give them to him as gifts. He just loves them, you see." "You mean the tree covered with boots and shoes? Yes, I saw it. It was quite an anomaly to me. I've never seen anything like it before, to tell you the truth." "Well, Bosun loves that tree. You didn't touch any of the shoes on it, did you?" "Yes, I did." The woman chuckled. "No wonder he gave you chase. I'm not remotely surprised. He's so territorial and possessive, doesn't want anybody touching those shoes. He wasn't going to kill you. You misunderstood him. He wanted to chase you away from his beloved tree. He might tell you he's going to kill you, but he doesn't mean a word of it. He was probably afraid you were going to pinch one of his shoes." "So you're saying he wouldn't have killed me, ma'am?" "No, he wouldn't have killed you. Don't be so ridiculous. Bosun is a teddy bear. He's got a heart of gold. He just gets terribly upset and aggrieved if people touch his things. Just like you would be upset if somebody went through your stuff. More to the point, young man, may I ask you what you're doing here? You didn't just randomly walk in my woods for no reason, did you? And if you were a poacher, you would have a rifle with you, unless you left it behind in the woods. So why are you here? Don't fob me off with any excuses. I may be old, but don't underestimate me. I'm not remotely stupid." There was no point in deceiving this old woman, so I chose to be straight with her. "You are Flint's grandmother, are you not?" "That's right. Oh, you came here to see Flint, did you? Oh, you've missed him. What a pity. But why on earth would you walk through the woods, if that is the case? They're dreadfully overgrown. You could have driven down my driveway. Then Bosun would never have given you chase." She sighed. "Some people can be so strange and do the oddest things. I'm so sorry that Flint is not here. He's taken his fiancée out on the town, you see." "Fiancée?" I asked. "You're talking about Toyah Bouquet, are you?" "You know Toyah," said the woman. "Oh, what a delightful girl she is. Well, my grandson got engaged with her last night. He asked her to marry him here at the house. We had quite the celebration, we did. Flint brought so many delicious things to the house. Caviar, everything you can think of. I'm afraid I knocked back far too much champagne. I'm still feeling a little giddy on my feet. Flint bought Toyah the most beautiful diamond ring. You should have seen it. She was thrilled to bits. He proposed to her here, and she said yes. Oh, they make such a charming couple, do they not? I know they're going to be incredibly happy together. And would you believe it, they fell in love over chocolate lava cake. Mind you, chocolate lava cake has got magical qualities, has it not? How long have you known my grandson for, young man?" "Well, to be fair, ma'am, I do not know your grandson at all. Nor do I know Toyah." "You don't know them? But then why are you here, young man?" "Well, I'm a private investigator, ma'am, working for a client of mine. Unfortunately, this client of mine is fixated on Toyah Bouquet and wants me to find out how serious her relationship with Flint is. She's obviously totally in love with Toyah, and is looking for any chinks in the armor of the relationship, if you know what I mean, in the hope that she can come crawling back into Toyah's life. She wants me to report back to her with photographs. She's paying me well for the job." You're talking about Toyah's ex-girlfriend Candace, is that right?" "That's right, ma'am. You know about her." "Oh, yes, I know all about her. I know all the details. That woman is obsessed with Toyah, a very intense character, you know. You can tell that she doesn't stand a chance with Toyah. Number one, Toyah is not gay, and number two, she's totally in love with my grandson. She's getting married to him, so that's that. There's not anything that Candace can do about that." To cut a long story short, and let's not kid, this is a long story, I left Laura's farmhouse with a stomach full of the most delicious food that Laura insisted on filling me up with. I made my way back to my car, if not a little reluctantly. I found it parked on the sequestered country road. I was fearful that Bosun would give me chase again, but thankfully I neither sensed him or saw him again. When I contacted my client Candace, I told her the sad news, that Toyah was madly in love with Flint and was getting married to him. Tears came into her eyes and she said, "Well, I suppose that's that then. You win some, you lose some. I'll have to find a new love, won't I?
but preferably someone who's not in such denial of their sexuality.
I hasten to say, losing my camera in the woodgrove, as unfortunate as it was, I understood from Laura, who I'd been visiting from time to time, that the Bigfoot has hung my camera up with all the shoes on his special tree. So I suppose at least that's something. The camera didn't entirely go to waste. So there you are. That's my story. Wow, what an incredible story. I loved every minute of it. And what a scary encounter with that Bigfoot, who had such a passion for a tree full of shoes. What an extraordinary story.
Well, hello there. I hope you enjoyed the Omnibus edition. We've got many more coming our way for you to listen to. Sending you love wherever you are in the world, in North America, Canada, Kenya, wherever you may be. I send you lots and lots of love. Thank you for listening to my Omnibus, and I really do hope you enjoyed it, because that's the whole idea about it, is to give you some interesting stories to listen to. So until next time, goodbye and good night.